So lots of people get really excited when they hear that Jupiter's about to change signs, especially when they hear that Jupiter is going into a sign that he's exalted in, you know, one of these signs, in particular the sign of Cancer, where he just seems to show up stronger and better than ever. But does that mean that you're going to have a good transit with this? Does this mean that Jupiter's position for the next year, just over a year, is going to work beneficially for you? Well, that's what I'm hoping to explore today as we deep dive into the whole idea of Jupiter moving into Cancer. I'm going to be looking at this from so many different perspectives. In particular, and I'll show you just now, I'm going to be looking, first of all, at who Jupiter is, you know, in terms of mythology, what he represents astrologically. I'm going to be looking at the aspects that are made at the time that he goes into the sign of Cancer. He's making one ingress. He's going straight in. He's not coming out of Cancer. So I'll be looking at those and what they might mean. I'm also going to look at the Sabian symbol for this particular movement chart, you know, as he's going into the sign of Cancer. So I'll be looking at the Sabian symbol for 0 Cancer. All of this seems, I think, really important in understanding the influence he might have. I really see that, you know, specific movements and aspects that planets make are like seed points. You know, they're always these moments in time where a new potential is being birthed. And obviously Jupiter has some connections to the idea of growth and expansion and luck and optimism. So there's definitely an energy of let's grow something. And I'm also going to have a look at the asteroids. But the thing that I think will be most useful to you will be coming right at the end. Okay, so this first bit is really to, I think, set the scene. And you know, just so you know, if you've heard this all before and you're not interested in the asteroids or Sabians, you can just skip along. All of this is put into chapters. So feel free to use this the way you want to. But anyway, towards the end part of this video, what I'm going to be looking at is where Jupiter is in your chart and how you can understand it. So for instance, and you know, I noticed this morning, maybe last night, you know, I was on my Facebook and there's a really beautiful astrologer who uses astrology in a really gorgeous way. She's very, very knowledgeable. And she was talking about the, you know, not just the last couple of times that Jupiter's gone into the sign of Cancer, but had traced it right the way back through her life. And she had noticed this ongoing pattern that she'd had ill health. And it's not really necessarily about Jupiter, but it's about the quality of Jupiter in her chart. I had a conversation with people who are part of my membership, part of my community. And on Tuesday night, we looked at our own charts and we spoke about what was going on the last 2 times that Jupiter went into Cancer. Were there feelings of joy and expansion, or was it a time when our faith was really, really tested? So I always advocate that it's really important for us to, I think, be the test in our charts, you know. So I really think astrology is helpful for us to learn how to decode the planets and understand the sort of planetary weather coming in. But I think it's also important to understand your own inner coding. So for instance, in my chart, Jupiter's super strong. But in other people's charts, he might not be so strong. And so, you know, if you've got a strong Jupiter, you might find that this Jupiter in Cancer pattern is working really beneficially for you. And you know, Jupiter he's a planet of growth. If you're, you know, if in your life and if in your chart your Jupiter isn't as strong, you might find that Jupiter's actually highlighting all that is not strong, i.e. inflaming things. So I do think it's really important to get a sense of how Jupiter is in your chart. Is he really strong? Is he a bit afflicted? Anyway, and then right at the end, I'm looking on a sign by sign basis. And now I do this with a whole sign Western tropical theme. That's the way I'm looking at these forecasts. But I'm going to be giving you an idea of how you might want to use this energy, how it might show up in your chart, what opportunities and gifts and possibilities are there for you, but also what might happen if maybe Jupiter's not strongly placed in your chart, or if you know, if it goes a bit wrong. You know, I always think with Jupiter, you know, he brings the energy of expansion. If you've got loads of great things happening in your life, he's going to lift it up. But if your life is already falling apart a little bit, he might speed that up. So yeah, he's not necessarily this fantastic planet. You know, he can also bring with us some challenges. Now, if you're new here, my name's Louisa Tannemunson. Welcome to my channel. I hope you like it. And for those of you that have come back, hey, once again, thanks for joining me for another deep dive. So yeah, I'm going to have a I work through these. I may go on a bit of a circuitous journey because I tend to do that. I also want to say, I always, I set my slides up probably about 2 weeks before I record, and I tend to wait for the right time when I feel like, yeah, now is the right time to really work on this. And I'm always paying attention to what's going on in comments. So in my videos, what's the temperature of people right now? And so it's interesting that as Jupiter is coming into the sign of Cancer, Jupiter has this kind of theme of not just about expansion and good luck and all things like that, but it's also about religion and faith and belief systems. And I noticed literally just last night, after talking about the full moon in Sagittarius, it's aroused, it's kind of stirred this religious spiritual energy. It's really sort of like come up onto the fore a lot more than I would normally notice. So I'm always kind of observing what's going on, just in YouTube and just YouTube searches, but what's coming up, what's becoming evident to me. And so that's the question I'd like to start this with. What are you noticing coming up in your life right now? Jupiter is associated with big things. What big things are showing up? It's funny, just like leading up to this, there's the big Trump Elon what looks like a huge fight going on right the way across the world, across all media channels. And you don't get anything quite as big as the almost larger than life characters in the world having a big old fight. It really reminds me, and I will get to this point. I did say I'd go off on a tangent for sure. Jupiter right now is coming into a square with Saturn, and Jupiter and Saturn, are very sort of different in the way they're expressing themselves, but they are both really wanting respect, and they are both very powerful planets, and we can absolutely use both of those powerful planets. In fact, you might find it useful to have a look at my Jupiter and Saturn square a deep dive. But anyway, what big things are arising for you? What things are you noticing right now where things are getting whipped up into a frenzy, which is a Jupiter thing, and especially with emotion, which is really a Cancer thing? Okay, so Jupiter in mythology, he is the god of the skies and thunder, and also law and order. So these are pretty high ideas, like it's not surprising that he rules law and order, because, law is a sort of higher examination of facts and things. And, I recently spoke about it in my new moon in Gemini video, and also my full moon in Sagittarius video, the sort of juxtaposition between Gemini and Sagittarius. Gemini is kind of like the nitty gritty information, the facts and what's going on, the black and the white, where things can be really put next to each other and judged. And then the sign of Sagittarius, the information there is more about the context. What does that mean? Okay, I see you've got black and white, but what does that mean? And so Jupiter, god of the skies, law and order is very much a contextual thing, maybe based on these black and white facts, but it still gets judged by a judge. There is something to look at the overall context. There is something kind of highbrow about Jupiter. He married his sister Juno, and he fathered really loads of notable children. And because of this, this also raised him up. Feasts are held in his honor. Religion, faith and trust and people skills were very important to him, in terms of how he was celebrated in Rome. And if you also consider his Greek counterpart Zeus, they've got very, very similar themes. Both of them expanded boundaries. And so if you think of Jupiter, it's the largest planet in the solar system. The idea is that they are expanding all existing boundaries. And so this is really important. And because he's such a huge planet, it also follows, interestingly, that he was the principal god of the Romans. So, he is like the biggest. He I guess comes with a huge ego. I mean, one of the things he's known for is his arrogance. And I guess that could happen, with a larger than life character who seems bigger and more brash, and also very contextual, and somebody that wants to be heard. He's the principal god. Now, for a little bit of his family context, and this also fits in with the planets of the solar system and what we're using in astrology, his grandfather is Uranus, the god of the heavens. His father was Saturn, or is Saturn. And there's a story. I mentioned this in the Saturn in Aries video that I did recently. Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter have really got, from grandfather, father, and son. There's this really sort of interesting story. Uranus was really upsetting to his wife, and she asked young Saturn, her son, if he would do something about his dad, because he was a bit of a wanderer, and she was very unhappy with him, and so he castrated his father, so that his father couldn't go about his being as free and as much of a loose cannon as he was. Now Saturn, grew in his power, and he became like the responsible son. He was the responsible leader, and Saturn was known as, I guess, old father time. He's known as Chronos in Greek. And his whole idea was like building things with lots of stability. So when we're looking in astrology, I'm looking at Saturn in somebody's chart. It tells me a lot about their levels of structure, how they adhere to rules, and what they think about like levels and achievement and success and ambition. Saturn's a very sort of ambitious character. And he was told, I think, at some point in his life, that he would be usurped by one of his children. And so every time his wife, Ops, gave him another child, he, like wrapped up in swaddling, he would eat the child. And, she really wanted her last child to survive. And so she swapped Jupiter and like hid him in some caves in Crete. And she wrapped up a stone, and Saturn ate him and thought, okay, that's it. I've eaten all my kids. It's cool. I can now, rule forever. Anyway, Jupiter, I've said his mother's called ARIES. She's also known as Ops, by the way. Again, that's, the difference between, the Roman deities and the Greek ones. But anyway, his mother had saved him. And, when he became of age, he realized what had happened, and he made his father vomit up his siblings. And so then, the Saturn hierarchy was really broken down. Jupiter became the god of the skies, Pluto, the god of the underworld, Neptune, the god of the seas, later oceans. His sister Ceres is like Mother Earth. Vesta is all about truth and our authenticity, and also a lot about prophecy. Juno is, I think, she shows us, I mean, she can show us where jealous women can come in. And Juno, he did marry, Juno and Jupiter did get married, brother and sister combo. Didn't work so well because he had lots of children with other women, and she got really mad about it. So she is known as quite a jealous woman, but she's also known as being very committed and dedicated. So I see where she comes up in charts. She shows marriage, dedication, commitment. But anyway, Jupiter has got quite a complicated life. And so when he came up into his prominence, and he usurped his father, and he became the god of the skies and thunder and law and order, he was seen as the principal god. And so that's a little bit of background. And, both Saturn and Jupiter are leaders in their own right. I speak about this in, this is a video from last year, because Jupiter and Saturn have actually been in a square since August of last year. So they've made 2 exact squares already, and they're about to make their third one on the 15th of June. Now, usually they make a square and then they move on. It just so happens that when they made their square, they were both about to go retrograde, and then they're both going forwards again. So they've come in and out of their square. But essentially, you could say they've been square since August of last year. It eased off maybe around February time. But now we are coming into the maximum energy of this Jupiter and Saturn square. And they've moved out of the sign of Pisces and Gemini, and this new square is forming or evolving into Aries and Cancer. So it's interesting. These squares only come up every 9 years. And so this really is like a battle of the oldies, a battle of these old rulers. Both Saturn and Jupiter are absolutely really like strong in themselves, and they really show up as authority figures in our life. Jupiter, I think of as somebody who sells a vision. You know, he's like the enigmatic CEO who creates the vision and engages and inspires people and makes people really excited that they just want to join and work with him. Saturn, you know, tends to create a structure with rules and hierarchy, and everyone knows where they stand with that. And they may well achieve quite a few things. It might take a bit longer. Whereas the Jupiter form of rulership is done on sort of friendship and connection, and it can go wrong. You know, Jupiter can over deliver and over promise and under deliver, whereas Saturn tends to be very measured and controlled. And you know, they are very, very different. And you know, it'd be interesting, you know, maybe as a source of research for you, for your own chart. I really encourage people to look at their own charts, but be interesting to see how they both work in your chart. You know, do you have one that is more prominent, that you rely on more than the other? Because that really shows, you know, the kinds of work that you might do well in. You know, both of them are ambitious. And so I think they really do describe how we rise up in our own prominence in our own lives together. So anyway, that's a little bit about Jupiter and a little bit about the ongoing underlying sort of issues, daddy issues that he's got going on. And also sowing the seed that, you know, this is something about our own personal authority and also our own sort of like magnetic energy. You know, Jupiter, he is engaging. You know, when your Jupiter is strong, you can really engage and light people up. You know, Jupiter is a hopeful planet. And when you've got a strong Jupiter, it can really show in the way you live, because it's super expanded. And when you are expanding, it tends to work for you. Whereas if your Jupiter is maybe unsupported in your chart, when you go to expand, it's almost like there's not enough energy there. So let's work through this together. Anyway, so a little bit about his cycle. So he's got an almost 12-year cycle. It's just a little bit below that, 11.9 years. This is a planetary cycle, which I got from astro-seek.com, which if you haven't used yet, I really recommend. It's free. It's a fantastic resource. In fact, all of my favorite astrological resources that I use to do these videos, I put them in my description fields below. So check those out if you're interested. But anyway, when he started his new zodiacal ingress into Aries, like to start his new journey around the whole zodiac, that was in May 2022. Right now he's coming into into Cancer, having been in Gemini for just 1.04 years, so just over a year. So from May the 26th 2024 until I said the 9th of June. I guess it depends on where you are in the world. It might be the 10th if you're in America. So yeah, this is him coming into the sign of Cancer. Now you can see they're all roughly 1 year, you know, and his shortest ones this year, his shortest ingress will be into the sign of Aquarius, but they're all pretty much, you know, the same month. You know, it goes from 1 year to the next, you know, so here it goes April, May, June, and so on and so forth. So he's got a 12-year cycle. This means he takes roughly 12 months to get through, you know, a particular sign in your chart. So it's quite easy. When you know that he's got a 12-year cycle, you can start to look back and say, okay, what was I doing 12 years ago? What was I doing 24 years ago? And if you can remember, what was I doing 36 years ago or even further? Because when you look back in these cycles of 12, you could say these cycles of 12, and Jupiter is very much about raising your status and kind of expanding in life. You know, he was the god of gods, you know, so he was quite a big and dominant character. His ego was huge. And he, you know, he was engaging. He was like pulling people in left, right, and center. And loads of women wanted to, you know, have babies with him. He, you know, he fathered many children. So every 12 years, Jupiter will come back to the same point. So, you know, when you start to look at life through the lens of a 12-year cycle, you can start to see that there are repeats to do with your success and repeats to do with how expressed and how magnificent you feel you are. You could say they are cycles to do with hope and optimism, cycles that are allowing you a new sense of growth. And, you know, if you observe those, they could be quite useful. I think I mentioned earlier, just moments ago, that I was exploring these a couple of days ago with some of my community members, you know, and when we were looking back at what was happening in the last two cycles, the themes from, you know, one of these 12-year cycles to the following one, they were very, very similar. So, for instance, one of my members had a test of faith in 1 year, and then, you know, 12 years later had another test of faith. They described this as one of their most important years. When we were looking at their chart, we saw that they literally had just had their Jupiter return just as Jupiter was going into Cancer. So, you know, their Jupiter was at 29 degrees. So you know, it's a Jupiter return and then Jupiter into Cancer. So it was a really big year for her. You know, and there are these repeating patterns. When I was thinking about what I was going through, there were issues to do with deepening connections with people going through birth, life, and death, and the recycling of that. It was very much about family, you know, the onboarding of someone, like somebody being born and also somebody passing away. So for me, there was a real emphasis of the transformations throughout time. And of course, my Jupiter is in the 8th house, which has a lot to do with all things transformational, all things birth, life, and death. So yeah, it's worth having a look. Now, if you've got something in the sign of Cancer, I've got Saturn in my Cancer, in Cancer in my birth chart. Jupiter, you know, when he is moving into a conjunction, you know, and also making the conjunction, then moving away from it, it can take around 10 months. Sometimes it can be longer because of retrogrades. But if Jupiter is going to come over one of your planets, so you've got a planet here and he's moving over it, it's important to bear in mind his influence is going to be lasting a while. And obviously it will be really acute in the middle of that 10 months, you know, when it's exactly over that planet. You know, and when Jupiter is over a planet, he is encouraging it to kind of like let things go and open up. And I imagine, you know, like the idea of a seed, like these are seed points, these are things that we're growing from. It's like a swollen seed, you know, if a seed has started to soften on the outside, and then all of a sudden you can see it swelling and swelling and swelling. Jupiter kind of does that to every planet that he goes over. He's swelling whatever potential is captured in that planet, is being inflamed, engorged. It's growing like a good old pregnant belly, you know. So something is going to be birthed through this planet. And I guess a lot of this depends on the quality of that planet that Jupiter is coming to. When I think about my Saturn, I'm thinking, oh dear, because my Saturn has got a T-square to Pluto and Venus and square to Chiron as well. Let's get this party started. But anyway, Jupiter coming over this point, whatever Jupiter is going to be going over in your birth chart, it's worth thinking about it. Well, how am I expressing that particular planet? So for me, how am I expressing my Saturn in the 8th house right now? You know, what does my Saturn in the 8th house mean? What haven't I dealt with that I need to deal with? That if I dealt with and was changing my outcomes and I was already on the rise, how could Jupiter emphasize that and lift me up? Or the other way of thinking about it, okay, I've got this Saturn situation in my 8th house. How could this get possibly any worse? So like if you've got a situation that you're not paying any attention to, you're not working with it, Jupiter can come in and really create a bit of a show. So it's really important to have a look. And that's why I've said, you know, negatively, Jupiter can also make us quite irresponsible, overindulged, proud, loud, egocentric. Verbose is a great word. Boring, overcompromise, underdeliver. And also somebody that might be religiously fanatical. We might well very come into our religious, spiritual kind of truth at that moment, but become a little fanatical about it because Jupiter is a bit like that. But, you know, if he's positively working with you, mostly you'll probably feel happy, hopeful, expansive, curious. I have noticed that when he is making a pleasing aspect to something in your chart, you might actually feel a little bit you know, I mentioned indulged. Obviously, he's a big planet, and Jupiter, the god of gods, had a massive appetite. You know, he's a massive boozer, massive party goer. God knows what he'd be like if, you know, modern day Jupiter was alive in the world, and there will be loads of Jupiters all around the world, but the one that loves to overindulge and eat all those rich foods. I mean, you could really just, you know, with a kind of soft and pleasing Jupiter aspect to something, you know, you might get a bit lazy, you might sort of overindulge and just kind of feel so good that you don't want to get off your backside and do something. So you have to watch Jupiter. It reminds me, there was a film called Serenity, and it was based off a Joss Whedon show called, oh crikey, what was it called? Firefly. I used to be a real Joss Whedon fan, by the way. But anyway, so Firefly and Serenity. In the film Serenity, if you've seen it, there's a big mystery as to why everyone died. And I think, if I remember this right, and it's years ago since I saw it, I think people suddenly just kind of felt kind of lazy, or just felt so good that they didn't do anything. They didn't work. They didn't feed themselves. They didn't look after themselves, because they just kind of felt well. And then they all died. So, so you know, it's very much a sort of lazy side to Jupiter, which can happen. So I do think it's worth paying a bit of attention to what you've done during these transits historically, and having a real good look through your chart. So in Cancer then, here are the big keywords. So first of all, let's go with the Jupiter keyword. So I've mentioned a lot of them already. So there's faith, expansion, luck. I love the idea of hopefulness. Wisdom isn't something that I've mentioned so far, but, you know, if you think he's the god of law and order, then wisdom really comes into it. Abundance, he was a very, like things would just come to him because of his energy. He would draw things in. Growth, optimism, faith, I've already mentioned. Philosophy, he's very philosophical. And if you think he rules the sign of Sagittarius and Pisces, and so, yeah, very, very philosophical. Higher learning is really important. The key theme, I think, with Jupiter is he needs a lot of space. He's definitely known for travel. If you've got a strong Jupiter in your chart, you probably have moved around quite a lot. He's, I say faithful. I don't mean faithful to his partners, because historically, the mythology of Jupiter was that he really played around. However, the idea of faith, like faith to a god or faith to, you know, the energy of life, then absolutely, it's a sort of religious kind of energy. And he's very humorous. He also believes in himself. So this could be a journey of self-belief and a journey of confidence. Now, Cancer, here's some keywords. It's the fourth sign of the zodiac. It's known for being protective, loyal and kind and gentle, really emotional and intuitive. It's very nurturing and sort of parental. The energy of Cancer, just they want to look after people, and really, really kind people. I'm married to a Cancer, by the way. So I've got a lot of lovely things to say about Cancerians. Very home loving, sensitive. Now they can be very moody. You know, so if things aren't quite right, you know, they really feel it. They're ruled by the moon. And if you think how many faces that moon has throughout the month, you'll understand the moods really shift and change a lot. Very compassionate and caring. And a big theme for them is like protecting children, like really protecting children, and also protecting loved ones from harm. So we are, I mean, you know, with the idea of Jupiter expanding issues, and also the Cancer keywords to do with parental home loving units, families, and also protecting children. I know there's so much news and things you hear if you keep your eyes and ears open about child trafficking and things like that. I really suspect, you know, with Jupiter coming into the sign of Cancer, any kind of bad intent or behaviors towards children will be exposed during this time. I really do think that's going to come out. Also, because the moon is the ruler of Cancer, I think any moon Jupiter connections are going to be really important in this year ahead. You know, I really think the moon and Jupiter, like, you know, every time the moon's going to go into a trine or a conjunction, I just thought my moon and Jupiter are together in my birth chart. So, you know, anything to do with moon and Jupiter together, it's really going to accelerate and strengthen the Jupiter energy in your chart and how it's applied. So I really think it's rich in family. I also think it's very fertile. So, you know, if you were wanting to conceive, this would be a supportive year for you to try. Oh, obviously, it would also, you know, be important to check out your birth chart. But Jupiter in Cancer is absolutely kind of pro family and pro protection of the warmth and the joy and the sharing and empathy and compassion and caring that, you know, you can have in a family. So yeah, I just think this is a really important position for Jupiter. And you know, he's just come out of, or he's just coming out of the sign of Gemini. You know, he's done quite a good job in Gemini, I'll be honest. Lots of information has come out. I think lots of people have been questioning beliefs, and I think there's been a lot more talking. I really do think, and I mentioned this in the full moon in Sagittarius video, I really do think Mercury and Jupiter have been working really hard in this last year, and there's been a lot of frustration about information and how it's shared, and all sorts of stuff about belief systems. I really think we're coming out of a time of needing to check what's going on, and we're coming into a time where we might just kind of trust what's going on in our hearts and our bodies. We might almost feel what's going on, because Cancer is so empathic and feeling. So I really hope that does happen. You know, because could you imagine if you're just in your body and able to like trust in the feeling of peace in yourself, that you would use that as your moral compass to know, you know, I when I think back to those days, because I obviously grew up before cell phones. So those days years ago where you really just needed to trust yourself if you're going out, and your parents would have to trust you. I think there's a kind of trust in self that happens. You know, you start to use your instincts a lot more. And since cell phones have got more and more popular, and of course now everyone's got one, and we use them all the time for all sorts of different things, I think we've lost that sense of confidence in ourselves, because we've outsourced all information gathering outside of ourselves, and it's just not inside anymore. So hopefully this Jupiter in Cancer is going to really bring us back to our core. That's definitely something I'm hoping for. Yeah, so just to kind of put it into a nutshell, I would say spiritual growth through nurturing is really important. Emotional wisdom is going to be on the rise. Our protective instincts and generosity to people, to those we love, I think are going to really swell, because obviously he's got a lot to do with abundance as well. So, you know, if you love someone, you're really going to want to share. I do think all things to do with family, blessings and homes. I think, you know, homes could get really big at this time. We might need to do some stuff at home to feel a lot more secure. And I think we'll get a lot more security through faith. Teaching and learning is going to be a lot more empathic. And I just think people are going to be a lot kinder and, you know, share a lot more. So I wonder what it's going to be like with the next generation of kids, you know, with Jupiter in Cancer, you know, also with Aries, Saturn and Neptune, and also Pluto in Aquarius. I just think the generation that's being born right now is, they're really going to be shaking all the patterns that we've grown up with, for sure. And good that Jupiter's in Cancer to give them a beautiful grounding. So let's imagine that you've not already checked out the dates of when Jupiter was in Cancer before. So those dates are, let's say July 2001 until July 2002. He was in the sign of Cancer. June of 2013 right the way through to June 2014. So you could say the summer of 2001 to 2002 and the summer of 2013 to 2014. If you can remember what the themes were there any themes about faith? Were there themes about needing greater levels of confidence? Were you more generous with your time during that time? And of course, where Jupiter is showing up in your chart at that time, you know, for instance, you know, for this particular chart, I mean, this is actually the Jupiter ingress chart, but you know, if this was your chart here, you would look at where is 0 degrees in the sign of Cancer, and that would be showing you where Jupiter was. So right, you know, here he would be going into your 7th house, but if your Cancer is down here, he'd be going into your 2nd or possibly 3rd house. So you know, each of those houses will have a very different feel to them, and Jupiter will express very differently according to that. And I'll tell you a lot more about that at the end of this video. But anyway, those are the 2 dates. And you can also go way back in time if you want to, because you know, if you go to this little copy and paste information, I took this directly from astro-seek.com. There's there's a menu where you can do returns on a particular degree, and I looked up the degree of 0 Cancer, looked up Jupiter, set the time to go back to 2000, and there it's just brought them up. And so you can always check. So if you were to go to astro-seek.com and put in the search 0 degrees Cancer back to the year of your birth, and then press enter, it will bring back every time Jupiter has gone over this point in your chart, just so that you can be really, really clear. So this is my chart now, and this on the outside is where all the planets are when Jupiter goes into the sign of Cancer. As you can see in my chart, and I'm using Placidus charting. I will be doing a video about Placidus versus whole sign, so if you're interested in that, look out for that. But Jupiter is midway through my 8th house. And so he is going to be going through the sign of Cancer. He's going to be going over my Saturn, and soon after that he's going to be going into my 9th house. So that's how you can see, you know, where he might be. But anyway, let's have a move on. So, oh yeah, before I do that, I just want to say thank you to everybody that supports my channel in all the different ways that you do. I really, really appreciate all of your confidence in me and your generosity. Thank you so much. So anyway, back to this. Let's have a look at this ingress chart. So this is when Jupiter goes into Cancer for the first time in 12 years. I set this up for London, UK, because this is the midpoint out of all of the different time zones. And this is how it shows up. Interestingly, for the London time zone, and this won't be true for you necessarily, but with the London time zone, the ascendant is at 0 Capricorn and the descendant is at 0 Cancer, meaning that Jupiter is right on the descendant, really giving this kind of loving touch as well. But anyway, the first thing that I realize or notice about this particular ingress chart is that the Jupiter and the moon are in mutual reception. And what that means is Jupiter's in the sign of Cancer, and Cancer is ruled by the moon. The moon is in the sign of Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. So they're both in each other's signs. And so, yeah, there is a kind of magic about that. You know, there's a lovely energy about that, because, you know, like I said, you know, watch what's going on with Jupiter and the moon, you know, in terms of this coming year. This is really important. And to me, that's the evidence of it. You know, they're both in a mutual reception, really showing, you know, the moon there is kind of more adventurous, and Jupiter is bringing a sense of sort of expansion in the family. So it's really lovely. The next thing, if I look at the aspects that are really inspiring and expansive about this chart, I would say Jupiter in a conjunction to Mercury in the sign of Cancer is interesting. You know, they have been working together in a conjunction in the sign of Gemini. That's been difficult. You know, they were in each other's signs over Christmas when, you know, Jupiter was retrograde in Gemini, and, you know, Mercury was retrograde in Sagittarius, in each other's signs in mutual reception back in December. And they were really, you know, I think people's brains were really fried. I don't know how you were feeling back then, but I know for me, I'm a Sagittarius, by the way, I was feeling so fried. I just was really finding it hard to concentrate on anything or sort through any kind of information. It's lovely now that these two are coming into their conjunction right at the moment that they're conjunction, and they are in the sign of Cancer together. Now, you know, Mercury's not happy in the sign of Cancer. However, you know, Jupiter's exalted, and I actually think this pairing is quite helpful. You know, this is really encouraging, you know, and I always think the ingress chart really describes the energy that Jupiter's going to have for this whole year ahead. You know, it's really setting the scene. And so yeah, Jupiter in the sign of Cancer is warm and open-hearted, and it's really giving Mercury the opportunity to be open-hearted with how he's communicating and how he's accessing information. You know, sometimes Mercury's assessment of black and white, right or wrong, good and bad, up and down, dark and light, and all that. You know, sometimes Mercury can be so efficient and defined in his descriptions. And I think, you know, with Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, there's this kind of empathy that comes out. And, you know, Jupiter and Mercury, I think, can start. I really see the blending of intuition and rationality coming on in this year in a really powerful way. So I'm very excited by that. Then this lovely sextile between Jupiter and Venus and also Chiron. Now, you know, at that time, Chiron and Venus are still just in a conjunction. They've been working together, really helping us to release any old issues to do with women, release issues to do with old female things going on for you, or ideas about your ability to work with people, enjoy being with people, yield, create, you know, all those, you know, Venus things. I think, you know, Venus and Chiron in their conjunction have been exploring where we're resistant to the good flow in our life. And so Jupiter here is absolutely working beautifully with both Venus and Chiron in this year ahead, so that anywhere where we're not in flow, anywhere where we're resistant to our own good, Jupiter's going to be helping us. I love that. And then we've also got the Moon in a trine to Saturn and Neptune and sextile Pluto. Now, I will be talking about Saturn and Neptune and also Pluto and Jupiter's response to them. But, you know, I like the fact that the moon is helpful at the moment of Jupiter's ingress. You know, the moon here is giving us, I think, an ability to understand our need for kind of spiritual leadership in ourselves. You know, Neptune coming into the sign of Aries, I think, is showing this real sort of spiritual component waking up in all of our lives, so that we can see something beyond what we've ever seen before. You know, none of us on the world currently, as far as I'm aware, are as old enough to remember the last time that Neptune was at 0 Aries. You know, so this is a whole new thing for all of us. And so Neptune at 0 Aries and Saturn also, you know, at, well, he's not at 0, sorry, he's at 2 Aries and Saturn at 1 Aries. You know, these two, Saturn is helping us to create an understanding of spirituality in a way that can help us stand stronger, to help us be a lot more resourced, a lot better in our sense of self-esteem. That we're more robust, and I think a lot more rigid and possibly forceful. I mean, Saturn and Aries, you know, Saturn isn't actually, you know, Saturn is weak in the sign of Aries. He's not strong. However, if you blend the idea of Saturn and Aries, you know, the being able to be direct and strong in yourself, an individual, and Saturn, you know, who can, I think he can put aside his feelings and suffer a little bit. You know, Saturn is prepared to suffer a little bit before things get better, you know, like, so he might work really hard so he can enjoy his retirement. You know, he'll suffer for so many years until he can retire. You know, Saturn is bringing us a kind of steely backbone, I think. And, you know, he's bringing us a steely backbone, you know, with this sense of spirituality. But the moon here is softening this. The moon is, I think, giving us an ability to see why we might be doing it. The moon also in a sextile to Pluto is showing us that emotionally we're ready to transform. We're really ready to see what's next and how we might evolve. Now, we might not consciously be aware of that. I think the moon is largely unconscious. You know, like stuff comes up and we might be raging one minute and then really kind of giggling another. You know, the moon is, you know, obviously it changes its face several times. So, you know, I do think we are ready for a transformation of sorts, and we're also ready to change and evolve as spiritual beings. And Jupiter here is just giving us so much more empathy, a much stronger grounding about our ideas on family. But I mean, there are other things that are showing that things might be changing. And, you know, Jupiter is in this, and I haven't mentioned this, I'll mention this at the end, but there is a yod going on between the moon and Pluto, which is also, I mean, look at these yods at the exact moment that Pluto is, sorry, a yod is where you've got two quincunxes pointing to one planet or two planets, I guess. They're very, very exact. You know, they don't come up very often, but in the Jupiter chart, as he's moving in, we've got this yod here pointing to Jupiter and Mercury, or pointing to Mercury, actually. We've got Jupiter, or sorry, Mercury to the moon, and also Venus to the moon. There's a lot of yod energy. Anyway, the challenging ones then, Jupiter square Saturn and Neptune. We're really feeling this at the start. So I really think this first week of Jupiter's ingress is likely to be quite explosive. I do think it's quite worrying that there's a lot of warmongering going on right now, and different countries not playing chicken. Well, yeah, I just think there's a lot going on, and our news outlets are reporting what's going on from their perspective. Who knows actually what's going on? You know, if we're all taking our information from the news agencies, God help us all. But anyway, and if you're a journalist, please don't, I'm not trying to offend you. Hopefully you're a really honest one. But I do understand that lots of things have money behind them. And yeah, this, like Jupiter and Saturn in their sort of coming into their exact square, as they've both just changed signs, as Neptune's changed signs, as we just about to have this really big fiery full moon in a square with the nodes, and Pluto changing signs as well. I just think we're coming into a really inflammatory couple of weeks. Hopefully it won't be as bad as you know, like when I look at it, I'm like, and then I see the news and I see all these you know, volcanoes erupting in Italy, and like threats between Ukraine and Russia, and you know, a big Elon Trump catfight. There's just so much more than that. Obviously, they're just the things that sort of popped out at me today. But yeah, Jupiter at square Saturn. This is the fight between the two big powers. One that is more expansive and more youthful, and one that is kind of very saturnine and very sort of like looking at laws and regulations and this, that, and the other. And Jupiter is coming into an exact square with Neptune as well. You know, and Neptune is very much about the seas and the ocean. So I wonder if something, and also like Jupiter in the sign of Cancer. Cancer is about water. So with these big squares, and also with the fiery element of Aries, I'm wondering if things are, you know, like whether there's warfare in the waters. To me, that looks, you know, because also in the waters, you don't know what's coming up from underneath you, you know, like that kind of Jaws kind of feeling. Again, I'm hoping that's not coming up worldwide. And I don't know what other astrologers have said about it at all. But, you know, what I'm more interested in is what's going on for you right now. So what's going on in your intuitive family waters, and, you know, what's going on, you know, Aries, like your desire to feel sovereign, your desire to feel individual, and to be able to exert your divine will, and to express yourself. How are these all coming up for you right now? Both water and fire are, I think, inspiring. You know, like the moon is very intuitive, and, you know, the fire is kind of inspiring. The two of them coming together, there is something like when you put them together, you get steam, you know, like these steamy things. These are hot and fertile moments in time. So what is going on for you? What is steamy going on with you right now? Like hot and damp, you could say. We've also got this moon Uranus Mars T-square. Now Uranus and Mars in a square is pretty fiery. I think it really encourages us to look at our own sense of independence, our own sense of freedom to do our own thing. You know, Mars is always, you know, looking, how can we feel more vital? How can we feel like we've got the power to do what we want to do? Mars is very defensive. You know, Mars obviously wants to defend himself, and in the sign of Leo, which is very proud, and very fixed. You might get action, like you might be feeling like you're about to take action because your pride's been hurt, or there could be those kinds of situations going on in the world where we take action, defensive action, and we kind of push and say, look, here is my boundary, and if you come over that, I'm gonna really I'm gonna really let you have it. So Mars in Leo is triggered, when his pride is at stake. The Mars Leo energy is triggered. Uranus in the last couple of degrees of Taurus is interesting. Uranus in Taurus, right at the start of this, I released a video about when Uranus first went into Taurus. I was talking about the financial markets and how money is likely to change. I just think whatever's being pushed right now could really change our money and make it crypto. I'm hoping it doesn't all go that way. And I also think that where complete systems come in that people are forced into, I still think these are the times when human innovation comes out and people will learn to transact in other ways. But yeah, I do see that that's a potential issue coming up with this Jupiter in Cancer ingress. However, again, I would ask you, where are you feeling so proud right now that you want to take action to prevent things from going wrong? And also, where are you wanting to manage your money suddenly very differently? Because if you've got your financial systems in your head as your route to freedom and sovereignty, if your financial systems aren't right, you're not going to feel very sovereign. So it's interesting, the sovereignty issue, because also I truly believe that Saturn and Neptune are really looking at our spiritual sovereignty. So there's a lot of buttons being pushed, a lot of triggers being activated. And then there is these like magical secret clues that are going on with this, because the yods are quite mysterious. The quincunxes, where one planet is 150 degrees away from another, they are very difficult to reconcile. Pluto's in a fixed air sign and Jupiter's in a cardinal water sign. So they've got nothing to understand each other by. Pluto right now is taking his cue from everything intellectual and computer based and systems based, and also looking at things like all sorts of words to do with equality, diversity, inclusion, which are very sort of Aquarian values. And Jupiter, is very personal in the sign of Cancer. It's family based. It's not about what's out there in the world. It's about the family and the loyalty to the family. So these two planets are not relating to each other at all, and yet they are connecting. So how can they work together? So these quincunxes, they create a sense of frustration, not as difficult as a square or an opposition. I don't think they are as apparent because they're slightly different. But there's a form of astrology that I've looked into a little bit in the past, the Magi astrologers, and they, in the books that I've read from the Magi astrologers, they talk about the quincunxes. They are quite magical. They are giving us the sort of subtle energetics that might be going on. So Jupiter and Pluto together, their energies have to do with power and expansion. And they are sort of expressed through the family and our sense of connection, and also through computers and networks, and also values. So there's a lot of these happening. So we've also got a Moon, Pluto, and Mercury yod. So all of these are in different elements and different quadruplicity. So we've got fire, water, air, mutable, cardinal, and fixed. So this yod that's pointing towards Mercury here is saying that in order to understand our vulnerabilities and also our power, we need to pay attention to the Mercury. Whatever it's pointing at is showing us something that can resolve what's going on in the chart. And so in terms of this Jupiter, just to wrap this up, in terms of the Jupiter and Cancer expression in this next year ahead, when we're thinking about how vulnerable we feel and how little power we have, we might make sense of it from the from thinking and communicating and connecting with people, because obviously, you know, Mercury is a real communicator. In terms of understanding our relationships to each other and also our family, we might also, and one thing that might help our relationships and our family is also to understand how we can be independent and philosophical with our thinking. So, you know, there are these new ways. So I do think we're being asked to be more in our empathy and be more in our sense of undefined things. Like it's less about black and white, right and wrong. It's more about context. So we are being encouraged to be more in a contextual ocean, but we're also encouraged not to go so far into our emotions that we're dramatic about it. So there's some interesting things. And these could really create some magic. On a another note is that these are all in yods with each other, because they're all at 0 to 3 degrees. So we've got the moon at 3, Pluto at 3, Saturn at 1, Neptune at 2, Venus at 3, 0 for Jupiter, and 1 for Mercury. You know, these will be playing. If you've got lots of things at 1, 0, 1, 2, or 3 in your chart, this particular Jupiter and Cancer is likely to kind of set things in motion for you. So let's have a look at the Sabian symbol for 0 Cancer, because I really love this. I think this is great. And if you like Sabian symbols, I really recommend that you check out Linda Hill's website about Sabian symbols, because it's really great and it's free to use, and there's so much you can get from it. I recommend that you look at your ascendant, your sun, and your moon for sure. Check those out, and that will give you a much more fascinating look at yourself. It really will. But anyway, for 0 Cancer, and it's always rounded up to the next degree, it said, on a ship, the sailors lower an old flag and raise a new one. Now, you know, if ever I was looking for a sign that something is changing quite drastically, that would be it. So it says, this symbol implies a time of dropping the old whilst adopting the new. To lower an old flag and to raise a new one marks real turning points in one's life. Something is changing, possibly dramatically, and the transformation should be taken seriously. Something that was once useful or valuable is or has ended, and something brand new is beginning or emerging. There should be a symbolic gesture or expression of this change of allegiance. It may help to run any new ideas of plans up the flagpole to see if anybody salutes. You could change countries, professions, relationships at these very significant times. So this is showing changing loyalties, turning points in obligations or duties, announcing new standards, letting go of old allegiances and taking up new ones, divorces, marriages, shifts. It's very interesting, isn't it, actually, that, you know, on the day I'm recording this, this is when the Elon Trump sort of changing loyalties is kind of trending right now. It's so weird me saying it's trending. That's so not my language, but you know, old allegiances and taking up new ones, divorces and shifts, changing loyalties. It's funny, you know, like obviously the moon goes over this every month. So we don't really pay so much attention to that unless that's, you know, 0 Cancer and you've got the moon at 0 Cancer in your chart. Obviously your birth chart is more important than, you know, the moon's transits. But, you know, when a slow moving planet goes over one of these, I really think you feel the energy coming in as it's about to happen. So it's big. And if we have a look now at the asteroids, because I said I was also going to do that. This is quite an involved episode, isn't it? So the asteroids at the time of Jupiter going into Cancer, I always like to check out if there's any asteroids that are exactly working with this particular change as well. And I really, really love the website serenu.com. It's www.serennu. So it's NU.com. And you can do a search, and it will search. It will bring up the positions of 1,000, up to 1,000 asteroids, and not just asteroids, but trans-Neptunian objects, Uranian points, centaurs, all sorts of different things. And so at the time of Jupiter going into Cancer, we've also got Arachne, which is at 0 Libra, so it's exactly square to Jupiter. And we've also got Orpheus, that's exactly square to Jupiter, and it's in such a tight conjunction with the with Saturn and Neptune as well. So a couple of things then. So Arachne, which is asteroid number 407, it's an interesting one. Arachne was a kind of vain and arrogant, and she challenged, I think it was Athena, to a weaving contest, and she said, "I'm better than you," and she might have won. I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure it was Athena, but anyway, at the end of this contest, Arachne was kind of really blowing her own trumpet about it, and she was turned into a spider, so that she really could be a weaver of all things. And so it really says, watch the web that you've been weaving. What are you weaving right now? What threads are you weaving into your life right now? So our pride and arrogance, and the punishment of the pride and arrogance that's vested upon us, is immense. It's also talking about nimble fingers and intricate patterns, layered meanings, entrapments, and being caught in a web. So I don't know how that fits into your life right now, and maybe it doesn't, but if you get any kind of spidey senses about this kind of thing, think about it like, oh my God, what web am I weaving right now? Because, this is at the ingress chart for this particular Jupiter going all the way through Cancer. You may well have some tension, like you might be in the process of doing something behind the scenes. I mean, I can think of times when I've been weaving a bit of a subliminal web. There have been times, like everybody will have experienced this, where maybe somebody's been bad mouthing them or not being very kind to them for a while. And you kind of step out of a particular relationship or step out of a particular situation. We might have had it through work or, all sorts of different things. There will be these times when there are these what appear to be impossible situations, and as you're trying to process what's going on in your mind, you may well find that the threads that you're thinking about are kind of weaving a new reality. And, be careful of the thoughts. One of the things I notice is, like, it always looks like relationships don't take very long to break down. Like they just happen just like that something happens and then it's boom, it's done and dusted. But I really think relationships break down over time. And, the thing that really, the straw that breaks the camel's back is usually really insignificant in comparison to the whole build-up of why trust has been steadily worked on. Now, bearing in mind this has to do with the family and emotions and sharing, if you've got any situations right now whereby you're feeling out of resonance with friends in your life or family members, just watch. You may well be weaving a web of your separation. So I think that's how I'm choosing to see it. But I mean, you may well have your own understandings as well. Now, Orpheus is kind of sad, actually. Bless him. Really, really talented, a beautiful musician. He was prophetic. He had loads of influence. He was very powerful. His magic was powerful, in fact. So he lost his wife, and he was offered a chance to reclaim his wife. He had to walk. He went down to the underworld to see his wife, who he wanted more than anything. And he was told that if he walked all the way out of the underworld without turning back, his wife would be returned to him. And he went and he went and he went and he climbed up. And then right at the last minute, he turned around and she was gone. That was it. So his loss of faith led to him losing his wife altogether. Anyway, later on, he was assisting in the Jason and the Argonaut story. And, as they were coming up to the sirens, he used his music, and he was able to drown out the siren song. eventually he was ripped apart by jealous women, but his head continued to sing. You know, like there's so much to him, but there's this feeling of sadness, this feeling of music. So what I'm really getting is tragedy and music here. This guy, I think, has been really hounded. You know, the Orpheus character. It's like the whole world's against him. You know, like Hades down, I think, was the one who you know, set him his challenge to, you know, whereby he lost his wife. You know, and the great big Jason and the Argonauts adventure. You know, it's almost like his whole life was affected by other people. So yeah, Orpheus, the Orpheus character, you could see him as a victim. You could see him as somebody who's highly, highly talented, but that his talents don't always end up working in the right way. I guess it helped with the Siren song. But yeah, mostly his music led him into sort of dangerous situations. So you might be thinking in terms of water, music, danger, and being betrayed, like this sense of betrayal. And so it's interesting, isn't it, that Arachne, she may well feel betrayed. I mean, she was betrayed by herself and her own sense of pride and arrogance. And then, you know, like the world betraying Orpheus as well. So it's interesting that those two are in opposition, and Jupiter is just at this touch point of this T-square. So there's some definitely big themes going on, and using Arachne and also the Sabian symbol. You know, I would absolutely say just watch where arrogance is taking you. And yeah, and also to trust yourself more, so you don't like lose your wife, or, you know, miss out on that impossible situation because of your lack of faith. So this is really calling us to go into faith for sure. Whew. So this is the big one. How strong is your Jupiter? Because, you know, Jupiter, like at the start I was saying, if your Jupiter is really strong, you're more likely to feel the benefits of Jupiter coming into the sign of Cancer. And so the first thing I would show you is this planetary dignities table. Each of the planets that we look at, obviously the sun and the moon aren't actual planets, but we call them planets. So these all these planets have a sign that they rule. I didn't say that very well. Rule. They also have the opposite sign that they're in a detriment to. So, for instance, the sun in Aquarius is not strong. It's really weakened. They also have a sign where they're exalted in, and they also have a sign where they're really fallen, like the exact opposite of the exaltation. And so, in terms of Jupiter, Jupiter is strong in the sign of Sagittarius and Pisces, and he's also strong, he's exalted in the sign of Cancer. So, you know, Jupiter is super strong in those signs. Now, Jupiter is weak in the signs of Gemini and Virgo. So if they're in those signs, you might think, okay, my Jupiter's not as quite as strong as usual. Or if your Jupiter is in the sign of Capricorn at birth, that's a weakened sign. You know, he's not strong necessarily. He's not playing to his you know, his like he's not in his best energy. Now there's more than that to consider. So this is, I think, an example of a strong Jupiter. So you might say, is my Jupiter powerful? I would say if he's in Cancer, that's definitely a tick. If he's in Sagittarius or Pisces, that's a tick as well, because he's either exalted or he's the ruler of those signs. You might also ask yourself, does my Jupiter have mostly strong aspects to other planets, i.e. conjunctions, trines, and sextiles? You might also say, do I just have lots of aspects with Jupiter, i.e. is he one of the most important planets in my chart? Because that would also raise him up. Is he direct, i.e. he's not retrograde? And you might also have an emphasis of Sagittarius or Pisces, or even Cancer in your chart. Now, again, this is actually my birth chart because I think it's quite a good example of quite a strong Jupiter. There are some things that aren't so good, but my Jupiter's in the sign of Pisces, and he rules that. He's got strong connections to Saturn. He's obviously in a conjunction with the moon. He's in a trine with Uranus. He is in a sextile with Venus. He's also in a trine with my ascendant, which I think is really helpful. So I think he's quite strong, given all of that. He also is one of my planets that has a lot of aspects. You know, he is also making. He's actually a skipped step in my charts. Like he's in a T square with the north and south node. He's also in a square to my Neptune and also a square to my Mars, which isn't so good. He's also connected to Pluto in a quincunx. So yeah, he is like one of my most busy planets in my chart. Also, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 planets in Sagittarius. My node is in Sagittarius, and I've got 2 in Pisces and also 1 in Cancer. So again, there's you know, another kind of sort of Jupiterian feel. So yeah, I would say Jupiter's very strong in my chart. Let's have a look at Jupiter, if he's being a bit difficult, or if he's maybe a bit difficult in your chart. So you know, you might have Jupiter in Capricorn, in Gemini or Virgo. So these are the detriments and fall. You might have mainly challenging aspects to other planets, like squares and oppositions. You might not have many aspects at all or no aspects. And Jupiter might also be retrograde. Now, I haven't found one with all of those, but this Jupiter in Gemini is in a square to Saturn, a square to Mercury, a square to Chiron, and also in a square to Uranus and a square to Pluto. So that Jupiter in Gemini is really up against it. You know, he's got a sextile to Mars, and he's also got a quincunx to the south node and possibly the moon. But mostly, you know, that Jupiter is really, really under pressure. So you might find in a chart like this that it's hard to expand. You know, like as you expand, it takes so much energy. So what I would say with both of those, whether it looks like you've got a powerful Jupiter, or if it looks like you've got a difficult Jupiter, I would just say what was happening last time in July 2001 to 2002 or June 2013 to 2014. If they were mostly pleasing and easy, you might expect that it's a more pleasing kind of energy when he goes into Cancer for this next year. And obviously, this Pluto is a lot more challenged. Sorry, this Jupiter is a lot more challenged than he was in 2013 or 2014 or in July 2001. I mean, this time around, Jupiter is in a very tight square with Saturn and Neptune. He's also in a quincunx with Pluto. But yeah, he's got some tough stuff going on there. Yeah, so if your Jupiter is expressed in your chart with challenge, you might also want to focus on the things that were going on at that time. So for instance, if you've you might want to try to, like in your existing relationship, you might want to be paying a little bit more attention to what's going on. You might be looking to minimize problems, you know, because wherever Jupiter goes, he's making it bigger, he's inflaming it. And you might want to sort of install some good habits before Jupiter gets to that part of your chart that he's about to inflame or enliven. So just some thoughts there. So before we get started, I just want to show you how you can find your ascendant. If you don't know your chart, I absolutely recommend it. So you go to astro-seek, or you could go to www.astro.com, which I also recommend. And you would go to, on astro-seek, you would go to free horoscopes, birth natal chart online calculator. You'd scroll right the way down to the bottom, put in your date of birth, time of birth, and place of birth, and click calculate chart. And then it just brings up your ascendant, and it is at 9 o'clock on the chart. Now, I like if your ascendant is early in like the sign, like if it was at 0 degrees Leo, I would absolutely recommend that you look at the Leo forecast that you'll see in a, you know, shortly. All 12 of them are going to be there in zodiacal order. So yeah, I would recommend that you look at Leo. But if your ascendant was right at the end of Leo, I would recommend that you look at the next sign, Virgo. Now, in this particular example, it's at 28 degrees in the sign of Cancer. I would actually, if I was in your shoes and this was your chart, I would say, look at the Leo forecast. If you are a whole sign person anyway, and your chart is done in whole sign, then just listen to the sign of your ascendant there. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. And in a second, you'll find all of the forecasts. So anyway, take care. Thanks for watching so far, and catch you in the forecast in a sec. Hey there, Aries. So let's have a look at how Jupiter going into the sign of Cancer is likely to affect you in this coming transit. Now, Jupiter goes into Cancer. This is Jupiter here in orange. He goes into the sign of Cancer every 12 years, and he's going to be there for about a year, from the 9th of June right the way through to the 30th of June 2026. And he's going to go, he's just going to be going straight through Cancer until he goes into the sign of Leo. That's going to be interesting when he does that, because it's going to be in opposition to Pluto, but that's a whole other story. Now, when Jupiter goes into the sign of Cancer, he is going to be expressing his sense of magnificence and his expansion and his sense of joie de vivre, like the idea of feeling good in his body, the idea of being hopeful and optimistic. All of that kind of good feeling is going to be emphasized through the 4th house, which is all about the home. So you may well come to expect that there's going to be a sense of movement to make your home life a lot more I wouldn't say secure, but more happy, you know, that the happiness of everyone in your family is attended to. You may well find that there's new family members coming in, because Jupiter enhances things and emphasizes things and grows things. So you may well find that, you know, there's a new member of the family coming in, or you might have people coming in and out of your house quite a lot in this year ahead. You might also find that it's time to actually move on, you know, move somewhere bigger. So the theme of big and home and family are all super emphasized. Now, earlier on in this video, I mentioned about how Jupiter might work for you in your own birth chart. And I recommend that if you haven't already looked at that chapter, that you check out whether your Jupiter is very strong, or whether, you know, it is maybe weak. Because if it's a bit weaker, you might find that Jupiter coming into this particular part of your chart is overextending you. You know, so I do think Jupiter, wherever he goes, he can make things much bigger, or he can actually inflame things, you know. So like, big isn't always good. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's a bit of a hindrance. So, you know, what I would do if I was in your shoes right now, I would be thinking throughout this moment in time is, how can I make my family feel much better in the most graceful, easy, and joyful way? I wouldn't be planning on making a huge move unless I check that there are no restrictions, no irritations, no ongoing niggles. You know, like, it's the niggly bits. You know, if you've got a weakened Jupiter in your birth chart, you may well find that it's the niggly bits that get overemphasized. So I would work with the niggly things first, and then start to expand, because you just don't want his expansive energy to expand the wrong parts of your life. You want him to be able to grow your life in the most beautiful way. So that's something to bear in mind. Now, if you wanted to check how it worked out for you last time or the time before, the last 2 times he's been in the sign of Cancer was from July 2001 to July 2002. And also June of 2013 to July of 2014. So, you know, this gives you an idea, like, if you can compare what you were doing back then. What I would say with this particular one is it's much stronger. It's much more potent. And here's why. So this is why I've put in some other planets. You know, so we've got Saturn and Neptune. Now, they are currently in the sign of Aries, but they are going to be dipping back into Pisces and then moving forwards back into Aries again. All of that in, you know, up until February of next year. So they are sort of in between this Pisces and Aries point. We've also got Uranus currently in the sign of Taurus. Literally within a month, he is going into the sign of Gemini, and he's going to be dancing around these two whilst Jupiter is going through the sign of Cancer. We've also got Pluto, who's already established in the sign of Aquarius and is going to stay in Aquarius. Now, these planets, these 4 planets are really, really slow moving planets. They are the slowest moving planets of the solar system that we're talking about. You know, obviously Pluto isn't, you know, he's a dwarf planet. However, I'm including him in my sort of planetary selection here. But these 4 planets, so Saturn and Neptune here, are all in the early degrees or right at the end, the late degrees of the previous sign. So they're all working together. And because they're working together, there's this sort of synergistic change energy going on. You know, Pluto is about these big monumental changes you're going through. Uranus is about shaking things up in a really dynamic way. And then Saturn is about strengthening things, and Neptune is about dissolving things. So these two working in the same place right at the beginning of your chart, which has everything to do with your personal identity. You know, you may well be feeling that you're going through such a big shift right now that it's that is really emphasizing the need for a new place to live. And of course, this is where Jupiter comes in. So, yeah, whilst it may carry some of the similar codings from 2001 to 2002, 2013 to 2014, this one is much more hard hitting. You know, I also think because these are the outer planets are slower moving, but they also work on society at a generational level, and also it's not personal, you know, in the same way as you might look at the sun and the moon and Mercury and Venus and Mars. You know, they're very personal planets. They're really affecting our personality, where the shifts that are coming in for you right now, they are coming from outside of you. It's like whatever is going on in terms of universal consciousness or the consciousness of humanity right now, it's those things that are coming in and creating the shakeup. So bearing that in mind, and what you're learning about yourself right now with Saturn coming into the first, and your need to toughen up, your need to feel like you're a lot more solid, a lot more firm in the way you're being. Maybe you're working on your body to feel a bit stronger, a lot more resilient. And then Neptune coming in as well and opening you up to so much more spirituality and a sense of like dissolving the old patterns away and really coming forwards with this kind of new energy. And with Pluto in your 11th, which is really opening you up to a more sort of global vision, and also some very powerful alliances. And then Uranus shaking things up in terms of how you are within your local community. It all makes sense that Jupiter coming into the 4th is likely to change the way you're living at a fundamental level. So the key words are home, family, expansion, and finding more joy and pleasure from being at home. Now, I did mention you know, that you might want to watch out for this if your Jupiter in your birth chart isn't as strong as some of your other planets. However, one of the things I would watch out for, even if you've got a really strong Pluto, is overextending yourself in the family. So for instance, you know, if you do need to buy a new home and you're kind of supersizing everything because Jupiter is there, you may well find that you end up moving to a place that's much bigger than you actually need. So, you know, or that it's much more expensive than maybe is really practical. You might be buying too big a place or making too much of a big deal about the family and the way you are working things through. And this is something that's happened to me actually when I've had Jupiter going through here and also Neptune going through my 4th. I've moved a lot, you know, so I haven't just moved once. I've moved like several times within a year. And yeah, so I can absolutely vouch for that kind of energy. Also, Jupiter does have this tendency to make us want to go further afield as well. So you may well find that your new vision has this sense of, I need to travel a bit more, or I need to see something much bigger. So however you're expressing this, your best way to find a sense of abundance, which Jupiter represents, hope, optimism, and a feeling that you're on the right track, that would come from your home. So my advice here is sow your changing seeds, sow the seeds of growth in your home and your family, because that is where the most hope and optimism is most likely to grow. So I hope that's helpful to you, Aries. If I can be of any help, you can find how to book a session with me below. Also, if you want to join my membership, all of the details are below. So anyway, lots and lots of love to you, and take care, and catch you another time real soon. Bye for now. Hey there, Taurus. So I don't know if you've listened to the first part of my video. There are probably some bits that maybe you needed and some that maybe you didn't. But one thing I absolutely recommend for everyone listening to these right now is to have a look, especially if you're interested in looking at your chart, have a look and see how strong your Jupiter is in your birth chart. Is it a really strong planet? Is it well connected? Is it exalted, or is it ruling the sign it's in? Or is it debilitated? Is it a bit weak? Because I really do think, and I was reminded of this by this amazing astrologer recently, that the quality of your Jupiter is really going to determine, or could really determine, how you go through the sign of Cancer. And let me be clear, Jupiter goes through this part of your chart every 12 years. So most likely you will remember what it was like last time in 2013 to 2014. That's from June to July. And you may also remember what was going on in your life in July 2001 to 2002. So, that will give you an idea as to what Jupiter might have been doing. The key themes with Jupiter are expansion, hope, optimism, a sense that things are growing. You're growing, your way of thinking is expanding. It's all about expansion, really. But if your Jupiter is really strong in your chart, the chances are this is going to really, really pack some punch, especially if in the last two times that Jupiter was here, you really remember a feeling of upliftment. However, if your Jupiter is maybe a bit weak or afflicted in some way, you may find that Jupiter coming in here aggravates things. He makes things much bigger than they really are. He really expands things. And so if you've got something going on in your life that's maybe not working so well, you may find that it gets inflamed during Jupiter's time here. So it's worth checking out that not episode, but that chapter earlier in the video about how strong your Jupiter is. Now, this is going to be working through the third house of your chart, which is all about community. It's all about your self-expression, what you learn, what you know, how you are with your friends, your peers, your siblings. And so you could reasonably expect that during this time, Jupiter is making things easier, making you a lot more social, like really want to come out of yourself, learning loads, because Jupiter loves to learn, let's face it. And you might find that there's a lot of lucky connections, a lot of synchronicity that comes into your world because of the people around you. You might also find there's a lot going on with your siblings. Maybe your siblings, you're going to do something, collaborate with somebody. So I think a lot of good deeds are really helpful. Like if you're being a sort of Jupiterian communard type person within your community, your good deeds are likely to work beautifully and bring you in some amazing things. Now, Jupiter, I always think that wherever the planets are going, especially when a planet is moving, I always think of it as a seed point. Or, when Jupiter and Uranus, for instance, got together in April of last year, I think that was a real seed point of creativity and expansion. So Jupiter coming into the sign of Cancer, I do think is also like a seed. We're planting seeds to grow. And the kind of growth that we're expecting is growth to do with our emotions and our connections. The sign of Cancer is really, I don't want to say mushy, but it really wants a sort of historical sense of like longevity in terms of your relationship. So you may well be making lifelong friends here as Jupiter comes through the sign of Cancer. And there's this real desire, I think, to kind of leave your mark within the community and to sort of create a legacy. So again, doing good deeds or working on things with people in a way that uplifts you, I think is going to be really helpful. Now, if your Jupiter is maybe not so strong, or if you've got a lot of planets around 0 to 5 degrees, for instance, in particular in these cardinal signs, which is Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, you might find that things expand a little bit too quickly, and that it's a little bit difficult to manage. And what I would recommend, because Jupiter is a planet of expansion, and things can really snowball out of, not snowball. I'm really thinking of an avalanche. It starts off as a tiny little ball, and with gravity, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and moves faster and faster. And of course, Jupiter has that energy. You start something, it grows, and it grows completely out of control. So one thing I would, recommend that you always check in on during this particular year, and it's going from the 9th of June until the 30th of June, 2026, is just, are you becoming a bit too big within your community? Your little deed, do you become, as you get bigger and more important, it's important to make sure that you're not becoming some kind of massive mogul or like a, you know, you become like a tyrant in your own community, because the Jupiter energy can get very arrogant, you know, like you can get, I've written here, too big for your boots, you know, where you get so comfortable and everyone seems to love you and it gets so easy that things just snowball. That's one thing to watch out for. So it's worth having a little bit of a check-in with yourself. You know, I'm not saying don't be creative and don't strive for something, but just watch out that Jupiter doesn't sort of make you go a little bit too far, you know, unless you're ready for those kinds of consequences. Now, one of the reasons I say that is because these other planets, these slower moving planets, all of the slow moving planets in the solar system that I'm talking about, that includes Pluto, they are all working together at the moment. So we've got Pluto in Aquarius. He's established there now. He's going to stay in Aquarius, you know, until he moves, like in like 19 years time. So he's there for the long haul, but he's currently at 4 degrees. Yeah, I think it's 4 degrees. We've also got Saturn and also Neptune at 1 and 2 degrees, I think, in the sign of Aries. Now, I've put them overlapping because during this Jupiter in Cancer time, they're also going to go back into Pisces and then come forwards again back into Aries in January and February of next year. So they are really toggling the 11th and 12th house of your chart. Similarly, currently right now we've got Uranus in the first house, which you will have noticed lots of changes going on in your life since 2018. You know, Uranus has really come in to really shake up your life and shake up your self-concept, how you think about yourself. And so that has already shaken you quite a bit. But Uranus next month on the 7th of July, he's moving into the sign of Gemini, and that is going to really awaken a lot of change in terms of how you're earning your money, how resourced do you feel. Is this going to make some big changes, and I will be talking about that in future videos. But with all of these in the early degrees or late degrees of the previous signs, they are working together to create massive change. So Pluto up here is really trying to expand you out of your career, like, you know, your sense of influence and power is just on the rise, and that's something that's going to be presenting itself over and over and over again. You've also got like Uranus coming into the second, that's going to be, you know, Pluto and Uranus are going to be really working to make you quite wealthy, or to feel like the value that you bring to the world is reaping rewards and it's making a difference. And then, you know, with Saturn and Neptune coming into the 12th, it's also showing a time where you need to, or you might choose to, work through any difficulties that you have in terms of insecurities, where maybe you don't believe in yourself so much, your self-concept, your insecurities, your fears, all those resistances and restrictions that maybe keep you back in a box, that maybe don't allow you to be free. They're all being worked on right now. And Jupiter is absolutely, as Jupiter comes into Cancer and you start to feel a lot more social, a lot more vibrant, a lot more about sharing and this, that, and the other, I think Jupiter's naturally going to bring you into situations where maybe you feel out of your depth, and where the sort of you that is emerging contradicts the you that maybe your unconscious mind is trying to keep safe, you know. So I think it's going to bring up some tension. However, I really think Jupiter is leading the way here. Jupiter is really encouraging you to move beyond what you think you know about yourself in terms of community. It's really opening up a new space for you. So if you are wondering how this all fits in with your own chart, and you want some specific advice, there's 3 different ways that I can help. The first one is there's this service called AstroNext. It's a WhatsApp-based astrological service, and there's 5 free questions you can ask it. There's a link below for you to do that. So that's something. I've also got my membership, and if you wanted to book in an appointment with me, all of my details are below. So hopefully you've got all these different ideas on how you can help yourself and blossom further into the community and allow yourself to play and be a lot more sort of expressive. So there you go. Hope that was helpful, and maybe catch you in another forecast real soon. Lots of love. Bye for now. Hey there, Gemini. How are you doing? So this is an interesting one for you because Jupiter's going to be going into your 2nd house as of the 9th of June. He's going to be there until the 30th of June, 2026. So it's just over a year of Jupiterian influence in your 2nd house of money, of self-concept, of yeah, this is a big one. Now, I've given you the dates of the last two previous Cancer, Jupiter and Cancer ingresses, or orbits, you could say, or residents when Jupiter went through there. And you might remember what was going on for you back in July of 2001 to 2002, or June 2013 to July 2014. The last two times he went through there, that should give you an idea of the quality of how Jupiter works in your birth chart. Now, this time round, Jupiter is really strongly aspected by the outer planets, i.e. the slower moving planets, and also Saturn. So the four most slow planets who are beyond him in our solar system, they're all lined up currently, working with each other, either at the end of one sign or the right at the beginning of the other, and they're making some very sort of perfect looking sort of geometry in our birth charts. So this Jupiter in Cancer time is so much more potent than the previous two. So you might choose to ask yourself, well, what happened in these last two? How was I increasing my self-concept? What was going on with my resources and my money during that time? So that gives you a sort of underlying theme of how this might be expressed. But I also recommend that you check out the strength of your Jupiter in your birth chart. So earlier in this video, I did mention that there are ways that you can determine how strong your Jupiter is in your birth chart. So for instance, if Jupiter is in a sign that he's really compatible with, whereby he is stronger, that's going to really help this particular Jupiter in Cancer encounter for the whole year ahead. But for instance, if your Jupiter is badly aspected, is in lots of squares and oppositions, if he's in a sign that he's not strong in, you might find that Jupiter coming through your second can bring up a lot of stress around your money, because, you know, wherever Jupiter goes, he's always expanding. He's always wanting things to grow, and he's wanting things to be lucky and optimistic and hopeful. However, that sort of growth energy can be too much. It can be overwhelming. He can go too far, and it can also inflame situations, you know. So any situations that you've currently got with your money that maybe aren't working out too well, you might find that Jupiter coming in here can sort of make it so much graver than you're expecting. He might move things a bit too fast. So again, it is worth checking out what's going on in your birth chart to really understand how he's likely to make a difference in your world. Now, let's have a think about this. So money and values are definitely, you know, the hot topic. But Jupiter brings with him blessings. So you may well find that your money suddenly gets sort of blessed. You know, is there going to be an increase in your money, or is there maybe a reduction in something that you've got to pay? Jupiter brings blessings, you know, in very different ways. Because it's also in the sign of Cancer, you might also notice that there's more family money, because, you know, Cancer is a sign of the family. It's a sign of emotional support as well. So you may find that there's a lot of generosity coming your way with money, and also that you'll be feeling generous. You'll be feeling that you've got more than enough and that you're happy to share. It can also correspond with you having really big plans, you know, like big expansion plans in terms of your work, which is obviously where most of us earn our money from. You may also find that it's a time when you're investing in yourself. You know, this also has to do with your self-worth. So anything that you can do to raise yourself up and to feel much better about yourself, so that you feel genuinely lucky and buoyant and spontaneous, I think all of those would really, really help you. However, if you've already got a tendency to overextend your money and to run out of money halfway through the month, or even on the first day of the month, if you're like spending your money like it's going out of fashion, you might find that Jupiter coming in here is emphasizing that already existing habit. So it's really important to watch out for that. You know, you may well find that more money is coming in, but more money is going out. So again, you might want to pay real strong attention to what's going on with there. You might be so optimistic as well that you actually take risks with your work at a time when it's maybe not the right, you know, it's just you've got the timing wrong. You've been a bit over ambitious or over confident. That's definitely something to watch out for. But let me just talk a little bit more. And this is why I think it's important just to have a little bit of this Saturn energy, which is really kind of challenging Jupiter as he moves into the sign of Cancer, because these slower moving planets are really creating an ongoing sort of underlying architecture in your chart. So for instance, Pluto in Aquarius, he is for the next 19 years now, he's going to be really working on the idea of travel and expanded thought and learning. There's this real desire to understand everything outside of your unique experience, to transform because of religion or spirituality, and because of your deep knowing, your deepened knowing, to know everything that you can about what life is, that sort of real sort of extension. So whatever you might choose to be doing in your work will have to reflect that at some level. You're getting power from everything that is alternative, or everything that's different, everything that is outside of your unique realm of experience. So whatever you're doing with your work, in terms of growing yourself, I think your growth into power comes with something a little bit different, a little bit more diverse, a little bit more outside of what you were born into. Then, I mean, this is the big one for you, I would say. And this is Uranus crossing out of your 12th house, which will be great, but into your first. And it's like, hold on to your hats. Uranus coming into our first house is also giving us this really strong desire to really shrug off every old identity that we've carried, and we've been carrying for too long. And so we shrug it off and we're like, okay, I want to be free. I want to feel like I can go to all these different places in the world. And I really want to make some kind of massive, bold change. This can really show up, when we felt too bottled and stuck in our life. And all of a sudden, we say, right, that's it, I'm off. I'm breaking this up. I'm selling my house. There is this kind of footloose and fancy free. And this is real, almost as if you feel like you've been suffocating. Your life has got so tight around you that it's like time to kind of cut off all these chains. So the idea of freedom and travel and movement are so strong, and they're just going to get stronger. You've also got this ongoing shift between Saturn and Neptune. So they are in Aries at the moment, but they will be ducking back into the 10th house, into the sign of Pisces, and then going back into Aries in January and February of next year. And so there is also this coding of where you've been very serious about your career is now expanding out through your contacts. And some really powerful ones, like Saturn in the 10th, is really bringing powerful people into your midst. But you'll need to have a really good constitution in order to keep them happy. You have to like cross the T's and dot the I's, and be very, very meticulous, which is going to be interesting with Uranus going through your first house, because you won't want to do that. So there's some ongoing underlying challenges, So what I'm really like in understanding the outer planets, I'm really getting that there's this need for freedom, a need for greater context, and a desire to collaborate with more people. So when you put that into the context that Jupiter's coming into the second house, that gives you loads more clues as to how you might choose which bits of work you're going to develop and which ones you're going to leave by the by the side of the road. So anything that's in your life that's helping you feel freer, less encumbered by other choices and responsibilities, the one that's allowing you to move and breathe, the one that's allowing you to meet interesting and influential people and creative people. These are all the moves that are going to help you make more money. So I hope that's helpful to understand. If I can be of any help, if you wanted a consultation to talk through some of these things in your own chart, then just check out my links below. I've also got a lovely link where you can get 5 free questions on a WhatsApp astrology service called AstroNex. Again, there's links there so you can get your 5 free questions, and you can ask about all sorts of different things, in fact, and get some really good astrological advice. I've also got my community as well. Check out the details for that too. So there's loads of different ways that you can find out more if you need to, but I hope that's been helpful to you, Gemini, and maybe catch you in a forecast real soon. Bye for now. Hey there, Cancer. So this is a huge one for you. Jupiter's going into your own sign. And given that it's such an important place, like whether you've got your sun in Cancer, or I really advise that you do it with, like, if you've got your ascendant in Cancer, this is even more important, I would say. But Jupiter coming through this part of your chart is awakening your sense of your own identity. Now, because it's, happening in your 4th house, the 4th, the 7th, sorry, the 1st, the 4th, the 7th, and the 10th. They're the most important ones. Like, they are really changing the way you're interacting with the world. And so this particular part that Jupiter's coming through right now is about expanding your identity. Now, I remember the last time Jupiter came through my first house, I put on lots and lots of weight. And that is one of the possibly unfortunate side effects. It can happen if you're not careful. But Jupiter tends to bring us a sense of hope, but also a sense of ease and grace. So, you know, the first is all about your body. It's all about your identity, your appearance, what you're known for, how people react with you, the sort of energy that you're giving off. And so the energy here is that you're getting bigger and better and brighter. Now, I always think that astrology is more useful when we can understand what has happened in the past. And so if you can remember back 24 years or 12 years, I think this could be quite helpful. So for instance, what was going on for you in terms of your identity back in 2001? It's from July 2001 until July 2002. And what was going on in 2013 and 2014 in the summer of one into the other? You know, whatever identity things were going on for you, you know, shifting your life and making a real significant change. Also things going on in your body, because obviously your body is part of your identity. This is something that may well come up again as a concurrent theme. So this is almost like the tempo of Jupiter in Cancer in your chart. Every 12 years, there is this kind of repeated energy that comes up again. Now, it would express itself in the same way if every time Jupiter comes into Cancer, it's got the same astrology around it. But this time of Jupiter in Cancer, the astrology is so patterned. This is a really, really potent ingress chart, i.e. when Jupiter comes into Cancer, the outer planets and Saturn, the 4 slowest planets after Jupiter, they are absolutely meticulously placed at the moment to create these very exact energies. They're really working with each other. And so I'm going to describe this in a second, but suffice to say, Jupiter coming into Cancer this time round is much more potent. The change is much more likely to come in fast, hard, and yeah, and it's worth understanding how it's going to work in your chart. So something I mentioned earlier in the in one of the chapters was how to work out how strong your Jupiter is. Like, is your Jupiter in your birth chart strong, or is it slightly weak or debilitated? It's worth knowing that, because if you've got a weakened Jupiter, you may well find that as Jupiter comes in, because he's really strong right now, that he's activating the things that your Jupiter is weak for. And of course, you probably don't want that to happen. So I think it's worth having a look in your birth chart, following my instructions or following my little guidelines to suss out how strong your Jupiter is and how likely it is to bring great change. So if you're you know, with all things being good, Jupiter coming into this first part of your chart is likely to create sorry, I had to cough then. Is likely to create a shift in your self-identity where you're becoming bigger, you're more of a personality, more people know you, and they're like, oh, look, there's, what's this name? It's a time when you're taking in a lot more into your world. So more is coming in and you're kind of opening your boundaries. The first house is very much about our boundaries, you know. So how comfortable are you to open your doors and open your windows, open your curtains? Do you want the world to see you or not? So yeah, a lot of relaxing boundaries, a lot of new things coming in, but it also brings up this sense of hopefulness and optimism and a sense of luck and synchronicity. It can really help you be in the right place at the right time, you know, and with the right thoughts, so the right kind of thing happens. One thing I would watch out for, especially if you've got a slightly weakened Jupiter, is getting kind of so sure of yourself that you become a little arrogant. You know, Jupiter is known for arrogance. You know, he gets so sure of himself, so confident that, you know, he feels like he can do everything better than everyone else, that he can do more than everyone else. He can become a bit boastful. So that's definitely something to watch out for if Jupiter is coming through your first, is that, you know, you may become a little bit too much, a little bit too talkative, a little bit too sure of yourself. And that can, you know, sort of signify when people start walking away and not spending so much time. You know, he can be a bit boring in the first house, to be honest. So it's always worth, you know, watching out for that. Now, I want to tie in Jupiter and Cancer according to what's also going on with the slower planets. So, you know, Pluto in Aquarius, he is here for 19 years now in this part of your chart, and he is really opening up everything to do with trauma in your life. You know, so old trauma, childhood stuff, the fears that you had about yourself, and the way you were with your family. A lot of family secrets are, you know, are being worked through. You might find that there's family wealth that needs to be distributed or understood. Obviously, in 19 years, a lot can happen with Pluto going through here, but there's a lot to do with your security and family secrets and how secrets can affect your security. And so obviously that sort of equals, you know, like it's like through trauma to transformation, I would say. So there is this ongoing releasing of trauma or looking at trauma to be able to work beyond it and to transform and move up a level or move into a different phase in your life. That's a huge thing. We've also got Uranus that has been going through your 11th and probably creating a lot of havoc with friends and contacts and networks. Maybe you've got so many friends in all different parts of the world now, and your energy is really, really broadened. But it can sometimes bring up some nasty situations and shocking situations with friends. And also, you know, the outer planets really symbolize what's going on in the outer world and outer consciousness. So you might have some real big shocks that you're reverberating, you know, about. You know, the 11th house is also about world visions and how ready and comfortable you are with world visions. So whatever is going on in terms of family and also the society that you're raised in, you know, like the life that is emerged around you has all been based on possibly avoiding trauma and getting on with the world. And right now you're being transformed beyond that. Now, Uranus is also moving into the 12th house. And so this is also symbolizing a time when you're embracing the uniqueness of you. And again, it's very difficult to do when you're holding trauma and not really freeing yourself from it. So I really see that you're becoming a lot more significant in your life by allowing what's different about you to come forwards, and anywhere where you've got resistances holding you back from really being yourself, that's definitely going to be worked on. And you'll be very intuitive about it. Also, Saturn and Neptune going from the 9th and into the 10th and back again and then back again. You know, there is this movement to rise you up so that you're seen by more people and respected by more people, and that you've got a much higher status than you've had before, and that your creativity, your soul drive, you know, like that sort of element of you that is a spiritual leader or entrepreneur or somebody with something of value to share that could really change the world. All of that is going to be worked on over, you know, the next couple of years and beyond. And so when you think of Jupiter going into Cancer with that in mind, you can see that this is really changing your identity in a great way. So I hope that's helpful to understand that context. You really are in this moment of time to release yourself from anywhere that's almost, wow, it's not really representing you. You're sort of embracing a new side of yourself. It's a much more heart-oriented part of yourself. You're getting much bigger. So yeah, this is a significant shift for you. So anyway, I'm going to leave that there. I hope that was helpful. Now, if you want some extra help, there's 3 ways I can think of right now. First of all, I've got a link just below that allows you 5 free questions on a new WhatsApp astrological service called AstroNext. So if you want to try those out for free, like I said, free 5 questions, and just check them out. There's a link below. And who wouldn't do that, right? I've also got a membership where there's quite a lot of additional support, including daily forecasts, love forecasts and money forecasts, and there's a community. We have hangouts and stuff, so there's that there that can also help you emerge in your fullness. The last one, of course, is to have a consultation with me, and if you choose to do that, all of the links are below. All you have to do is just book yourself into my diary. It's as simple as that. So there you go. Have a great one. This is your Jupiter movement for sure. So yeah, there you go, and hopefully I'll catch you in another forecast real soon. Lots of love to you. Bye for now. Hey there, Leo. Now, are you ready to get a little bit more real with yourself? Because Jupiter coming into this part of your chart is really going to be awakening something much more real in you. Maybe something that you've forgotten about, something like an unconscious drive that you've just kind of let. It's just kind of got lost in the back of your mind and you've forgotten about it, because Jupiter is here now. He's sort of activating all of those parts of your behaviors, hidden behaviors, those things that maybe where old shames and upsets and insecurities live. And he's awakening you to a new way of being. He's giving you a chance to let go of some of the things that have been holding you back from moving on. So this is pretty significant. Now, with Jupiter coming into this part of your chart, there's likely to be this emerging gift of spirituality within your unconscious mind, your subconscious. There's a sense of peacefulness and hopefulness and optimism in solitude. You're much more likely to be peaceful in yourself in a sort of meditative state. It's really enhancing your intuition in a way that you'll be quite surprised at how spontaneous you can be. And it really helps you to be much more of service. So these are all some of the most beautiful things. It's also very ancestral, really ancestral. It's great. One of the things it can do, and this is something I would watch out for, is anywhere where you've got really terrible fears and oversensitivity, like super sensitivity about things from the past, you may well find that Jupiter brings it out. So this may well start with a bit of a crisis because some of your fears appear to be almost coming true. I just want you to know that whatever is coming up because you're ready to release it. It's not coming up because it's not coming up for shits and giggles. It's coming up for a real reason. It's like whatever is hidden and can't be hidden any longer, Jupiter is coming to bring it forwards. And Jupiter in Cancer is pretty compassionate. Now, if you're worried, and I would encourage you not to be worried. I would refer you back to the last previous times when Jupiter has come through here. I always think it's important to double check what's occurring now with a similar time or a similar sort of set of circumstances. So the last two times, so it's 12 years ago and 24 years ago, that might give you an idea of what was going on in your life and how you were expanding. What were you growing during those times? And so my question to you is, what was going on in July 2001 to July 2002? How were you emerging spiritually? How were you allowing a more silent part of yourself to come forwards and grow? And then the last time was from the end of June 2013 until the mid-July 2014. How were you sort of blossoming that secret side of you? Now, this particular one is a lot more potent than previous ones. And the reason being is the four most slowest planets of our solar system, and I'm including Pluto in this, although he's technically a dwarf planet. These four slow moving ones are right at the end and at the beginning of a new sign, or they've just come over. So Pluto, for instance, is currently in Aquarius, and I've done loads on Pluto and Aquarius, so you can always check that out. He is in the seventh house, which is all about relationships. And, Pluto in the part of your relationships, I think is showing you how you can trust others more, and how really powerful people that really match who you're being and match your potential and match your sort of transformation, they're all coming forwards. And so it's like, how can you develop a much greater level of trust in yourself and the trust in the power of relationships? You've also got Saturn and Neptune. Now, they've both moved recently out of Pisces into Aries. They are going to go back into Pisces later on this year. And then in January and February of next year, they're going to push back into Pisces, back into Aries. So right now, Saturn is kind of signing off, I think. He's helped you get more structured. About any old trauma that has come up in the past, in particular ancestral family traumas, inheritance traumas, shared asset traumas, anything to do with how you're being judged, and how difficult that can be. You're moving beyond that. You've created some very good habits to move beyond worrying, and to be a bit firmer. You've got firmer boundaries with people that might be not very nice. And so Saturn coming into the ninth is really helping you to have some discipline with how you're emerging in a spiritual way. It's really helping you to expand, but with a sense of structure, which may well be useful for you at this time. Neptune coming out of here, I think, is a bit like waking up out of a bit of a nightmare, where it feels like there's lots of gaslighters around you and you're not really sure about what's been going on. And the great thing is Neptune coming into the ninth is absolutely helping you to be a lot more poetic, and again, your spiritual energy is really growing. You don't have many boundaries on it at the moment. You're really opening yourself up. So again, that's really working beautifully with Jupiter. You know, Jupiter is really set to enhance your level of spirituality. And how you relate to people on a much bigger scale. You're nobody's mug anymore. You're nobody's fool. Sure, you're happy to connect with people, but you're really not about to be taken advantage of by anyone. And then Uranus is moving out of your 10th, where he has sort of shaken up your career a little bit and given you the desire to be a lot more independent. So you have a lot more sort of self-power. And a lot more fun with how you earn your money. And he's moving into the 11th, which is bringing in a lot of eclectic and fun and change makers, lots of really great networks and interesting situations. So with that all in mind, and you're looking at Jupiter now, this is so potent. Jupiter is not only unlocking your spirituality and your sense of potential, but he's giving you a moment, I think, to rest deep inside and to I think integrate all of these changes about the other people in your life and how your interactions with them are helping you. And it's also giving you the time to adapt to all the new things that you're learning. And of course, with these two in the ninth, you'll be learning a lot. The last thing I want to say about this, there's a couple of more things. You know, Jupiter in a year's time, sort of the beginning of July 2026, he's going to be moving into your first house, and this is going to be a big one. You know, when he comes into your first house, things are going to really get exciting. So to me, this is giving you the sense of a nourishment, like a nourishing rest to expand internally. Because when he comes over into the first in 2026, all bets are off. You know, your star is going to be really shining for sure. Last thing. Earlier in this video, I have a chapter very much to do with how strong is your Jupiter in your birth chart. I was reading a really great sort of blog piece on Facebook by an astrologer friend. And she was talking about how if your Jupiter is afflicted in your birth chart, if it's not very strong, you may find that the Jupiter energy can sort of express itself more negatively than positively. So if you're interested in finding out how strong your Jupiter is, I've put in some helpful pointers, sort of an example of what a strong Jupiter might look like and an example of what a weakened Jupiter might look like, so that you can have a look yourself. I always think where things are slightly weakened, you might find that your sensitivity and your fears amplify. So again, if you know that this is likely to happen, it's a really good time to get somebody around you that you trust, that you can open up to, that can really help you manage your emotions so that you don't fall foul of that. And so you make the most of it. I really think with Jupiter, the tendency is to go too far, too quickly, too soon, and in too much of a way. So a little bit of modicum, especially because he's in one of his, in his best sign of all. You know, Jupiter's going to be really wanting to expand through your 12th house. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. My last thought then is, if you would like some extra help unpacking Jupiter in your life and to sort of know what seeds you're planting to do with your growth right now, then there's 3 ways I can think of that could be helpful. The first, and this is completely free, that I've got a link below in the description fields for 5 free questions with a new WhatsApp astrology service called AstroNext. So you've got nothing to lose there. If you want to ask a question, click on the link and try it out for yourself. I've also got a membership where, you know, we meet, we discuss things, we share things as a group. There's daily forecasts, there's fortnightly forecasts on money and love for all signs. So there's a lot going on there that's quite helpful and supportive. The last one, of course, is if you want to book some time with me, then just feel free. There's links below where you can book time into my diary. So if that's helpful, that's good. Hope you have a great Jupiter in Cancer encounter, and maybe catch you in another forecast real soon. Lots of love. Bye for now. Hey Virgo. So this is an interesting one for you. We've got Jupiter going into Cancer right now. And he's going to be emphasizing the 11th house, which is a hugely social house. And it's also a house, I believe, is like the law of attraction house. You know, it's a place of visions, like real visions, strong visions, visions that you might have for the world, and ideas of collaboration. You know, how do you want to expand and express yourself with other people? So this is quite exciting. Now, I always think that future is proved by the past. And so you may find it useful to look at what you were doing back in July 2001 to 2002, or back at the end of June 2013 to July 2014. That should give you an idea of what was happening last time Jupiter was going through this part of your chart. Now, Jupiter has an energy that is expressive, like really expressive, and it's can be overbearing. And in the sign of Cancer, it's very much about expressing with connection and generosity. There's a real sort of like deep need to connect with people in a way that it feels like there's a lot of longevity. You know, Jupiter is very sort of tactile in the sign of Cancer. And so you might be really ready to expand into a nourishing network of people who have similar goals to you and want to create something really big and helpful, something that's going to help families, help communities, help people feel really good in themselves. So yes, it's a big one. I wonder what you're going to be creating with it. So you might find that during this time, there's a lot more friendships coming in, a lot of networking. There could be some very, very big people that want to connect with you for very, very big projects. And I say big really sort of purposefully, because obviously Jupiter is he's the most important god he's the god of the gods in Roman and Greek mythology. He's a bigwig, and it can be really great in terms of finding a good vision for yourself. So if you've not been sure about, you know, what vision you're wanting to bring into your world, this is a time, you know, this year is almost like you can get your drawing board out and start to design your life as you'd like to see it. So something very hopeful. There's also something very philanthropic about it. You know, there is this genuine need to be generous with your time and generous with your sharing and to reach as many people as possible. So again, you know, big projects and visions, like a world vision, a community vision. So community action, I think, is really quite a big thing. Could be a great time to get involved in a community garden or whatever it is that floats your boat. So I really do think it's a big law of attraction space. One thing to watch out for, obviously, with the Jupiter energy is spreading yourself too thin. You might find that there are so many different things that you want to get involved in and connect with between friends and your projects that you don't really have much time for yourself. You might also find that you are not able to put as much of yourself into things because, again, there are very big people that you're playing with, and it doesn't maybe you might find it doesn't give you enough room to express yourself. So there are some challenges. Now, what I would say about those is a lot of it depends on how strong your Jupiter is from birth. So if you're familiar with your birth chart, I would recommend, and you might want to go back to an earlier part of this video where I'm discussing how strong is your Jupiter. Is your Jupiter really enhanced and exalted? Is it in a really strong position in your birth chart? Does it have lots of great aspects to other planets? Or is your birth chart Jupiter retrograde in a fall sign or in its detriment? Does it have lots of difficult planets working with it? You know, because I think Jupiter in our birth chart really describes our energy and our feelings about growth. Are we ready for growth? What kind of things happen when we get ready for growth? Like, do we do it too fast? Do we do it gradually? Are we hopeful about it? It can really describe that. And so What I would say is if you've got a slightly maligned Jupiter in your birth chart, you might find that the energy of spreading yourself too thin and the Jupiter friendship network energy just comes in too strong too quickly, and it's difficult to manage. Whereas if you've got a more graceful Jupiter, a more beneficial Jupiter, you might find it comes in just the right way, speed and timing for you. So again, you'll get a lot of this from the last two Jupiter encounters in the sign of Cancer. Now, one thing I would say is obviously this is describing what was going on the last time Jupiter went in Cancer in 2013 and also in 2001. But this time round, and I know that these outer planets, these slower moving planets than Jupiter, they weren't in these kinds of positions back in those days. Right now, the planetary alignments are so strong. I think it's making this particular Jupiter in Cancer transit really potent. So again, the growth energy is going to be so much stronger than usual. So like if you have been like working towards a really big vision, one that's almost so big that you've not even dared mention, because you know once you mention it you might have to do it and then you might have to fail at it, you know. So if there's something you've almost feared doing because it's so big, this could be the time, because this is really potent energy. And I want to just describe it, because if you understand how the other planets are working to support Jupiter right now, or to, you know, how are they impacting Jupiter in your chart, it might give you a better idea as to how you might use that socially, and how you might use it to collaborate with others. So first of all, we've got Pluto, and he's going through the sign of Aquarius right now for the next 19 years. He's in the 6th house of your chart. He is really transforming the way you do life. You know, so you might find that you're not living your life according to the narrative you thought you might live by. You know, you might find that there are aspects of your health and your daily routine that are really transforming and changing. And I think that's important for you. Right now, you've also got Uranus coming out of Taurus and going into Gemini. So he's coming out of your 9th house and going into your 10th. To me, your sense of wanderlust in the last, since 2018, have brought up so many more ideas on what life is about. Like if you go back to before 2018 and what you thought the world was like, and your interactions with the world, having Uranus going through the 9th since that time has given you so many experiences that it's really broadened your ideas, and will have given you lots of permission to be wilder, to be more free, to be a lot more independent, to be a lot more considered and contextual in how you make your decisions. And it's perfect because now Uranus is coming into your 10th house. He's really wanting to shake up your career. He's really wanting to shake it up in a big way. He wants to make big waves. He's likely to come in and bring with him a sense of independence, i.e. like working for yourself or having a lot more control, and also having a lot more freedom, so that you're not bogged down doing the same old drudge things. You're wanting something that has a lot more meaning and a lot more relevance, and a much higher sense of integrity for yourself. So when you put those in and then think of Jupiter coming into the 11th, you know, he's giving you an opportunity to connect with the right people, to feel a lot more relevancy and authenticity. He could really help you. You know, he could be the missing link. You know, you could use this time to find the right people to help you create that job you're wanting. But let's also remember that Saturn and Neptune have recently gone into the sign of Aries. They are going to go back into Pisces soon, and then they're going to go back into Aries from January and February 2026. So these guys are really opening up your life to understand where you've been held back by family dramas, ancestral dramas, histories, shared baggage between you and partners. And they will really show you what has worked, and they really will show you what's not working. And they're going to help you design a framework so that you're able to get much clearer about how much intimacy you want with people, and also how much Like, how are you going to construct your boundaries? What are you going to do with your boundaries between you and other people? And how are you going to work without feeling completely judged by the people around you? So I think this is really interesting because, Pluto is showing you that your work is changing. Uranus is showing that your career and your reach are also changing in a big way. And Jupiter is here to lead the way, to help you maybe meet the right connections, make the right connections, so that you can develop a much more compelling global vision, or a vision for yourself. So there's some thoughts about how you might use that energy. I hope that's helpful to you, Virgo. There's a few other things I can mention that might be helpful. So the first one is in the description field below, there's a link whereby you can have 5 free questions for a WhatsApp astrology service called AstroNext. So again, what's to lose? It's 5 free questions to check it out. I've got a membership. All the details are below, but it includes a lot of support, including like daily forecasts, fortnightly love and money forecasts. There are hangouts, there's all sorts, but it's a community and you're safe to grow there, put it that way. The last of all, if you wanted to have a consultation with me, for me to look at your chart, and we have a sort of we have a good conversation about it. Hopefully we can unlock some things that maybe felt a little bit stiff or tight around you. Then again, you can just book into my diary. All of my details are below. So there you go. That's how I might be able to help you. I hope this forecast has been useful. And I really hope that this particular transit of Jupiter in Cancer works beautifully for you. There's definitely lots of opportunities there for you. So I'm going to leave that there, sending you loads of love, and hopefully catch you in another forecast real soon. Bye for now. Hey there, Libra. So let's have a look how Jupiter in Cancer is going to work for you. What's going to be coming up. Now, this is an interesting one because you can see Jupiter up here right at the top of the chart. He's going to be going into your 10th house. And that house is all about your legacy, your ambition, how you're like marking your place in the world. I really see it as a place of where you stand tall and firm in yourself and say, here I am, like, this is me, this is my offering. This is a very, very public part of your chart. And I guess I'd like to explore this through how it may work really, really beneficially for you, but also what to watch out for to make sure it doesn't go kind of wrong. Jupiter is a very public, outward facing planet, and it's bigger, it's larger than life. And so, in this very sort of public part of your chart, you probably want to make sure it's going to go as smoothly and as beneficially and, with as much uplift as possible. So that's what I'm hoping to guide you through in this short reading. Now, I always think it's helpful to consider what's happened in the past, because if you can go back just a couple of Jupiter and Cancer transits, it may well give you a feel for what that pattern is bringing up for you. So the first pattern then, if we go back 2 Jupiter cycles ago, when Jupiter was coming into this top part of your chart, that was from July 2001 to July 2002. That was like two cycles ago, so 24 years ago. So you might want to consider what was going on for you. Like, how are you uplifting? How are you growing? How are you growing in the Cancerian way? Because, the sign of Cancer, I think, is very much about home, family, very much about compassion, very much about protecting your loved ones. So, what of the Cancer story was coming out with Jupiter's sort of enhancing energy. The second time was at the end of June 2013 to midway through July 2014. So again, you might remember what was going on for you and how you were enhanced in the outer world. How were you more visible? How were you more seen? If you were to look through like astrology books, you would find that, Jupiter in the sign of Cancer in your 10th house is really standing for more of a career legacy. It's helping you stand firmer and also be seen for things like promotion, for getting a new job, for finding a new part of your job that gives you a certain amount of authority. Jupiter was very, very happy with authority. And, his way of being authoritative was to spread a vision, to share a vision, to engage people to join him in his magnificent vision. Jupiter was the god of the gods, for, you know, from the perspective of the Romans and also the Greeks. So, well, that would be Zeus, however. So he was really building something about his own authority. There is definitely something about your star shining. You know, that is absolutely something that's likely to show up, and parents can show up. You know, I think the parental houses are the 4th and the 10th. Some astrologers really put the mum in the 10th and the dad in the 4th. I tend to just think the more inward parent, the parent that is more in the home, the parent that is more self-effacing is more like the 4th house, and the more overbearing parent or the more public facing parent, the more outward parent, I always associate with the 10th house. So there may be things going on with parents. You know, this is a place where we rise up in status. And so, you know, if for you, a rise up in your life would be to become a parent, I think that's also something that could really happen. The 1st, the 4th, the 7th, and the 10th houses are these amazing houses of changing life. You know, like this is really showing how the wheel is turning, and something significant is likely to happen in one of these 10th house Jupiter years. So this is pretty impressive. One of the things to watch out for with Jupiter is he has a tendency to overdo things, and you know, so his self-confidence can come across as arrogance. You know, so I mean, we all know those types of people. We've all come across them. We've all possibly been them as well. I know I have, and probably will still be. But you know, where we maybe get a little too full or too confident, and then all of a sudden, you know, we start to get a bit arrogant or overbearing, a little bit bossy. Can be quite demanding and dominant as well. You know, Jupiter, you know, is calling for well-being and to feeling really, really good and strong. And so if he feels that he needs more, he's likely to be a bit demanding. I always think that what is coming through the 10th house can also show somebody coming into your life, you know, like a boss, an authority figure. So you may well find that during this time, if you're working for somebody else, that there may be like a new boss coming in, or somebody who is really larger than life, a larger than life character, or maybe you are becoming that yourself. So yeah, they're some of the more abiding themes. Now, another part of this I think is worth bearing in mind is what's the quality of your Jupiter? Do you have a strong Jupiter, you know, were you born when Jupiter was in a good place, you know, well aspected? Is there a lot going on with your Jupiter? Is Jupiter one of your principal planets? Or, you know, is Jupiter quite lonely in your chart? Is he in his fall or his detriment? Is he in a place where he's not so strong? You know, is he in lots of squares or difficult situations with oppositions? I think it's worth having a look at that. And if you want to, I've got a section earlier on in this video where I'm talking very much about the you know, about what are the qualities that make Jupiter strong and what are the qualities that make Jupiter weak in your birth chart. So you could use that as a guideline. Because if you've got a slightly afflicted Jupiter, if your Jupiter's not that strong, you may well find that Jupiter in Cancer kind of amplifies and exacerbates and irritates and inflames the situations that are going on. Hopefully not. I really hope not. And again, you know, you might want to see, you know, what was going on in 2001 to 2002 and 2013 to 2014, because if it was sort of inflammatory, I mean, I can think of some real howlers that I've done in my earlier careers, you know, where I've, you know, been a bit careless, a bit reckless, and you know, Jupiter can be a little bit slapdash at times. I can remember times when I've got into quite an important position and then really had egg on my face. And so that's definitely something to watch out for. You know, if your Jupiter is well placed and well served within your chart, and you've got a lot of Jupiterian kind of energies in your birth chart, you might find that this is one of these times when your Jupiter, your natural, easy Jupiter energy is lifting you right up. So again, I think that's worth considering. My final thoughts then. Now, obviously, when Jupiter went into Cancer in 2001 and also in 2013, I don't think we've got quite as exceptionally patterned astrology as we have right now. I mean, what's going on right now with the 4 slowest planets of you know, our solar system, I mean, including Pluto in this, you know, they are all lining up at the beginning or at the end of signs. And so right now we've got Pluto, he's definitely in Aquarius now for the rest of the duration. And he's working out in your 5th house. So he's bringing in a lot of transformation around the things that you want to birth, maybe in terms of having a family. There's a lot of transformations around children and the ideas of what you're wanting to bring forth. I mean, this is a place of passion, you know, and where we're lifting ourselves in passion and we're able to experience more passion and all the things that light us up, you know. So Pluto is really wanting you to sort of transform in this area. He's giving you I think he's giving you challenges so you trust yourself to do the things that are lifting you up, which is quite a strong instruction. You know, Uranus has been going through this 8th house part of your chart for quite some time. And that's quite a tricky place to have Uranus go through, I would say. But he's coming into this very sort of liberated part of your chart where he's really wanting you to get a lot more independent, a lot more cosmic, to see the context of things and to see the joy and freedom of things. You know, Uranus and Pluto in their ongoing trine, they are really encouraging you to follow what lights you up, follow what is, you know, what makes you a bit freaky, a little bit different, a little bit wild, you know. So this is, I think, rewilding in process for you, Libra. And then you've got Saturn and Neptune. I should say Uranus is going to go back into, he's going to go into Gemini on the 7th of July. Then he's going to go back later on this year, back into Taurus, and then he will go back into Gemini in April 2026. So all of that is going on during Jupiter's transit through the sign of Cancer. So there's a lot of wriggling going on with Uranus. Similarly, both Neptune and Saturn are currently in Aries, but during, you know, the rest of this year, they're going to pop back into Pisces and then go forwards into Aries in January and February of next year. So, you know, this Jupiter transit through Cancer is really, really experiencing a lot of foundational shifts. And in particular with Saturn and Neptune going into the 7th, it's really showing new kinds of characters coming into your life. And, you know, I noticed when Uranus went into my 7th house, Uranus brought in lots of astrological people into my world. So my business, it expanded quite quickly and in quite a surprising way. It also brought in quite a lot of edgy people. And it also brought in people or equality within relationships where I realized I couldn't rely on people in quite the same way, you know, that in my own desire to have a lot more freedom in my life, I had to realize that people around me had freedom. Similarly, I think, you know, your world is filling up with people that are quite serious about things and also quite spiritual and also a bit sort of wondering about things. Suffice to say, when you combine them both together, you're probably experiencing people going through quite a crisis in confidence, with people who are really changing the way they are right now. And so if you think about it, you're encouraged to feel more freedom, more, you know, a greater sense of self-expression, and to really explore what's lifting you up. And you may well be doing that, like your key clients potentially could be people that are wanting to make a massive life change, you know, that they're very serious right now and they're very serious about the spirituality. And if that rings a bell for you, then Jupiter coming into this top spot of your chart is perfect for you to consider how you are moving forwards with your career aims, how you might launch something really quite big, like relaunching yourself, how you can move further. Again, you know, I would say part of moving you further is appreciating that people are very serious around you right now and they want to be taken seriously. So any way that you can parent and or be like a guardian or help coach people, or, you know, kind of wrap them, you know, like wrap your kind and caring arms around people during this time. What I really see is you are kind of holding the hands of people to get them through the next load of change that's occurring. So it's a pretty big role for you right now, Jupiter in Cancer, Libra, as Jupiter comes into the sign of Cancer. So lots of stuff going on. Big stuff. Again, I recommend looking back to those years to see what was going on, to see how it's likely to evolve this time round. Final thoughts then. If you wanted to explore what this might mean to you to have Jupiter going into Cancer at a deeper level, feel free to book into my diary. All my details are below. I've also got a link just below where you can get 5 free questions with a new WhatsApp astrological service. So again, all you have to do is click on that link and you can access those 5 free questions. Or failing that, I've also got a membership on School that offers quite a lot of support that you might quite enjoy at this time to help you to bring yourself on and to be seen in the world. So there you go. I'm going to leave that there, Libra. Take care. Have a great one and hopefully catch you in another session real soon. Bye for now. Okay, Scorpio, so let's have a look at how things are likely to move forwards for you as Jupiter goes into the sign of Cancer on the 9th of June 2025, and he stays there until the 30th of June 2026, so just over a year. So Jupiter here is coming into your 9th house, which is all about expansion. It's a house that Jupiter's very, very competent in. All of his energies seem to work really beautifully. I mean, Jupiter tends to be a planet that brings up lots of sort of feelings of faith, optimism, hope, and a real desire to move around, a real sort of itchy feet kind of energy. Now, from the perspective of the Cancerian energy, that's also bringing in a sense of generosity, kindness, and compassion. So, one of the things that I really think is likely to come up during this time is this sense of real growing compassion, growing empathy for people in all different parts of the world, this sort of sense of emotional generosity for people and the way they are in life. This is also a place where people tend to study a lot. They want to deep dive into the higher context, the hidden context of things. So in terms of what you know about the world and what you know about your life, you're likely to go deep diving into a much broader understanding. Now, one of the things that I think always helps us in understanding astrology is to check a current transit, i.e. Jupiter going through the sign of Cancer, against the last 2 times or 3 times or as many times as you want to go back. But check it back. What was happening 12 years ago? What was happening 24 years ago? So these are the dates. So you might want to ask yourself, how was I expanding? How was I learning more? How was I experiencing life between July 2001 to July 2002? What was going on? What was I learning about the world during this time? How was I becoming more generous in my heart, and how was I being really compassionate about things very much outside of myself? You might also want to ask yourself again, what was happening 12 years ago? So from the end of June 2013 right the way through to midway July 2014, what was going on for you? What was significant? Now, I do think this can also correspond with times where we're traveling, because, the 9th house is anywhere but here. So we might be traveling in our mind, we might be traveling in our soul if we're talking about religion and philosophy and spirituality, but we might be physically traveling as well. This can also show up as a time when we really want to experience being anywhere but here, anywhere that's a little bit unusual, anywhere where we're going to experience a whole new vibration. So yeah, definitely it's time to travel, expansion in so many ways, mind, body, spirit, but also the craving to learn more, the craving to do more. I remember, I've got Scorpio rising myself. I remember when Mars came into the sign of Cancer last year, all of a sudden I signed up for loads of to take action on lots of things I wanted to learn. Whereas Jupiter, I don't think it's quite so active, but it is this really strong desire. To me, it's this I think of it almost like a promise to grow, like Mars. My Mars going into there was like, I'm going to study this if I like it or not. But Jupiter is all about the feeling good principle. How can you use that energy to feel good about what you know and how you're relating to the world? One of the things to watch out for with this particular position would be on taking on too much with learning, whereby you sign up for things that really you don't have the time, you don't have the capability to be able to complete. Also, I would say actually studying something and then giving up right at the end. Jupiter isn't really known for persistence, because he grows, he evolves. And yeah, then he gets a bit sidetracked because, if there's something kind of new and more relevant, Jupiter, I think, really does follow relevancy. I think that's why Sagittarians, Jupiter rules Sagittarians. I think that's one of the reasons why Jupiterian type, Sagittarian type people can be, not me, by the way, and I have my sun in Sagittarius, but there are quite a few fashionistas and people that stay on the edge of trends, always pushing it, because, they are always out there, always wanting to experience things. But, when the relevancy of one thing dies off, they're straight onto the new thing, really hopping onto the new and to the future. So you might find with this energy in your ninth house that there's just too much to be able to achieve. And there's so many more relevant things that, you get so far and then you're like off onto a new tangent. So, that's something to be aware of. And also like having your mind blown, whatever was going on for you during this time, it may be opened you up to a whole new way of life that, frankly, just put you onto a completely different track. So it's always very interesting. The next place he's going to go after this will be into the sign of Leo. And when he does that, he's going to be in the top part of your chart, which is about your career and how you stand in the world and what you're known for. But Jupiter coming in here can be very lucky. So if I was in your shoes, I might want to explore myself as much as possible. But if there was something you needed to do that you need to do in order to push you on much more favorably in terms of your career in about a year's time, that would be a really good thing to invest in, in this year ahead, when you've got this kind of studying energy, this roadmap to the next step. I really think this is, Jupiter is on his way up, is going to help you. Now, a couple of other things I want to mention. First of all, whilst I think, mapping out the previous two Jupiter in Cancer energies and how they were manifesting back in those days for you, one thing to know is this particular Jupiter in Cancer transit is very different to most other ones. Right now we've got the 4 slowest planets in the solar system, and I'm including Pluto in that, even though he's been deregulated to a dwarf planet. But Pluto, Neptune and Uranus, the 3 slowest, the 3 outer planets, they are all in the process or have just done it. They've all changed signs. So Pluto changed signs permanently in November for his complete transit in Aquarius. Neptune has gone into Aries. He's going to go back into Pisces. The same actually for Saturn. He's also just done the same. So they're going to go into Aries, go back into Pisces, and then in 2026, in January and February, both of them are going to move back over to Aries. And we've got the same with Uranus. He's in Taurus currently. Within a month, he's going to be in the sign of Gemini, and then he's going to go back and then move forwards again. All of this taking place whilst Jupiter is in Cancer. So, these outer planets, they're showing what's going on in the world. They're showing external events and external consciousness and how it might affect us. So, yeah, in terms of how it's affecting you in your life, Pluto's really showing that it's time to live very, very differently and to trust that everything you need in life is going to be supplied. It's almost like the more you're forcing things to work in a particular way because you don't quite trust it's going to work, the more it becomes absent. So this is really asking you to trust that everything is going to be okay. Neptune and Saturn coming out of the 5th and going into the 6th is going to be an interesting one. That's really showing that it's time to start defining how you're living your life. In recent years, with both of them having been in the 5th house, you've learned a lot about what you're trying to create in the world, but now's the time to actually plan for it to happen. The 6th house has so much to do with planning. Neptune's opening your world up in quite an uncomfortable way, with lots of creativity coming in, and lots of ifs, buts, maybes, and whens, and uncertainty. Saturn coming in is really trying to settle everything down, and I don't think that's possible. I think it's going to be an interesting balance to work with Saturn and Neptune in the 6th house and trying to work out what it means. Now, with Uranus coming into the 8th, there's going to be a lot of internal inquiries. I think you're going to be learning a lot about yourself, in particular reviewing a lot of past events and the possible trauma that's come from those events. So, I really think in unlocking personal trauma from your childhood, and then knowing that you're meant to trust that life is going to have your back, it's a hard one. But I really think these two planets are trying to show you that actually anywhere where you're holding trauma and anywhere where you're trying to control how things are going in your world, it's holding you back. It's not allowing you to truly innovate and truly transform. It's just keeping you locked in the past. So isn't it interesting then that whilst all this stuff is going on behind the scenes, Jupiter is coming out and encouraging you to have a deeper look, a deeper context, to go deeper into spirituality, go deeper into religion, to have a lot more compassion for people and their very different lives, to experience your difference, to celebrate how you're different, and to maybe travel beyond or outside of where you have spent most of your life, and to look at your life from a completely new perspective. So to me, Jupiter is like a portal showing you a new version of living, a new version of life. Maybe there's a whole new possibility for you. And then when you find yourself in this new place, of course, it transforms where you live. And of course, it's going to have a knock-on effect on whether you're holding on to all these past traumas or not. So this is quite a deep and energizing aspect for you. Obviously Jupiter's also going into a fellow water sign. And if your sun or if your ascendant's in Scorpio, there's a slight ease with this Jupiter energy. It's going to work for you. Final thoughts then. Jupiter doesn't always mean growth and ease and grace and luck and optimism and hope, and it's not always a good and uplifting thing. Jupiter can sometimes be cause too much of things, and things can quickly get out of hand. Jupiter grows things, and if your life is already working in quite a consistent and positive way, he will totally lift you up and speed it up. But if actually you're in a bit of a pickle and there's a lot of loose ends and some that are quite dangerous, then Jupiter could really bring that up into sharp focus very quickly. So I would watch out for that. Now, I've done a previous recording, like a different chapter earlier in this video, asking you or giving you guidelines as to how to see, like, is your Jupiter in your birth chart positive and enhanced or and beneficial, or is your Jupiter a bit afflicted in your birth chart? Because I think if Jupiter is a bit problematic in your birth chart, as he goes into the sign of Cancer, he could really speedily lift up all of those old problems and can make matters worse, in fact. Whereas if your Jupiter energy is pretty well expressed in your birth chart and I'm ready for the change, I'm ready for the expansion, then this is going to go much more smoothly. So I do think it's worth checking that out. If I can be of any help, by the way, it's easy to get in touch. All you need to do is book an appointment with me. All of my details are below. If you maybe don't want to invest in that, then there's a link below that will give you 5 free questions that you can ask on the WhatsApp astrological service called AstroNext. It's new, and you can be one of the first people to use it. So you get 5 free goes. Just click on the link below. I've also got a membership, which is a really lovely, it's a growing community. It's growing nice and steadily. And there's a lot of things, if you're wanting to share in what's going on right now and to develop relationships with people around the world who are figuring themselves out, then it may well be a good place for you. So also check those out. All of those are below. But whether I hear from you or not, just have a great Jupiter in Cancer transit, and hopefully I'll catch you in another forecast real soon. Lots of love. Bye for now. Hey, Sagittarius. So, Jupiter is your ruler. And so I do think Sagittarians, and I've got my sun in Sagittarius, I think the Sagittarius energy is really very well adapted for Jupiter. And so Jupiter's about to make a change and he's going into the sign of Cancer, another sign that he's very comfortable in. In fact, he's exalted in this sign. And so this could be a really big transit for you. He's going to be there from the 9th of June right the way up to the 30th of June 2026, so just over a year. I always think it's worth checking out what was going on in the previous times he was transiting through this part of your chart. So if you can remember back 24 years, what were you doing July 2001 to the end of July 2002? That might give you a clue as to what was going on. Similarly, what was going on for you at the end of June 2013, coming into the end, like midway July of 2014. If you can remember back far what was going on, how were you growing? How were you expanding? How were you lucky? How were you experiencing a sense of good feeling? Jupiter here is going to be going into your 8th house. And so the 8th house is a funny one. It's got a bit of a bad reputation. It's associated with birth, life, and death, and all of the cycles of life. It also represents the kind of shared values and shared assets that we have with people. So, for instance, it represents our partner's wealth, the wealth of our families, and how it might reach us. It also represents the wealth that we are co-creating with. And for instance, like things like banking, taxes, mortgages, loans, and all sorts of financial instruments are really, really managed in the 8th house. But it's also a place of emotional values. So, where we've got blame, shame, guilt, and anger, where we've got resentments that build up between partners and family members, anywhere where there's expectations on you that maybe you don't feel like are fair or that you can't live up to, or maybe you've got expectations and judgments on other people. I mean, this is a place where a lot of baggage, ancestral baggage comes up, and ancestral wealth too. So again, I wonder what was going on for you during those times. When I take myself back to that time, I remember looking after a neighbor who had no family. He was from a different country, and because he had left before he did his national service, he wasn't allowed to go back. And so this was a man that had never married, never had children. He was in his 70s. He had no one to look after him. And so I, for about 8 months, he was my neighbor. I really liked him. And I was visiting him in hospital and later in a hospice. And so I really did experience the whole sort of tumultuousness of the whole life cycle and what happens when we get ill, what happens when we die, and how we can join together and share values together and learn about life together. So for me, that first time, it was almost as if I was expanding my family. He became my family for a while. The second time round, I was a new mum, and my son was maybe about coming up to 2. So it was still early days in my motherhood journey. And really my whole life was about exploring life as a mum. So nothing great really happened, nothing earth shattering happened, but there was a lot of things going on about mums, like being a parent, also being, what's the word? I wasn't earning at that time, so I was being kept, so to speak. Like the idea of what is my value if I'm not earning money, but I'm obviously working very hard and providing a home for my child. So there's a lot of things going on to do with values and stuff like that. So I wonder what was going on for you in your unique experience. You see, this is a very transformative place. You're going from one stage of life to another. For me, I was going from really sort of exploring further the true value of being a mum and caring for others. So that's a theme that's come up in my chart. You're about to burst forth. You're about to unravel your self-judgments. Isn't that an interesting thing? That maybe some of the things that you've held over yourself, like you'll never be a good mum, or blah, 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 whatever is going on, you get the chance to unravel it because Jupiter goes in there and he kind of shines his bright light. You know, he's a big planet. He makes everything he touches bigger and bolder and more obvious until you can't really ignore it. So yeah, and money things are coming in. Are there going to be options for you? Are you going to take out loans during this time? Are you going to pay back loans? I would, if and a lot of this depends on how Jupiter is expressed in your birth chart. So first of all, I would say Jupiter could be quite a strong character in your chart because he's your ruling planet. But does he have really good relationships? Does he have good aspects to other planets in your birth chart? Where is Jupiter in your birth chart? Is he in a beneficial place? You know, I've got a chapter earlier on, or that is about how to work out if your Jupiter is strong or not. And if your Jupiter is a little bit problematic in your chart, like for instance, if he is ensconced in a load of trauma and difficulty, like if he's, I don't know, in an opposition to Chiron maybe, or in an opposition to Pluto and in a square to such and such, you know, if he's got lots of tight and difficult things going on, you might find that also impacts how Jupiter is expressed through the 8th house. So you might find that, you know, any joint values that you've got with people become inflamed. You know, you might have a sort of a disagreement with somebody that can get blown out of proportion, whereby your values and expectations are very different to another person's. You might also find there's some money difficulties, or, you know, maybe your partner, like somebody in your partner's family passes away because, you know, this is about your partner's wealth, or it could be, you know, the wealth that comes from your family. So, you know, there is possibly other money coming to you, but it may well cause some problems in, you know, in receiving it or seeing it come in. So all of those things can get a little bit inflamed. My advice to you is, anywhere where you're owing something and worried about it, get it sorted out as soon as possible, because you know, Jupiter coming in here could inflame it. I mean, one way of thinking about it, I always think that Jupiter's can be quite protective and quite helpful when you're working with him. I mean, I recommend working with all the planets as they show up, and so I think anywhere where you're open about things and you open up about things and you're opening up in good faith and opening up with optimism and using the qualities of Jupiter, so it's optimistic, hopeful, lucky, I think it helps in those situations, you know, to have that positive mindset. It's likely to tip things in your favor. So, you know, whether your Jupiter is a bit difficult or flipping awesome, the best way of enhancing that Jupiter energy to resolve any issues is to stay really open and positive. Now, one last thing I want to share with you, and that would be that this Jupiter in Cancer transit is unlike any we've had in recent years, because we've got, not only Pluto has just recently changed signs, and he's like the slowest planet. He's a dwarf planet, but he's the slowest of our last 4 planets, and he's showing where you're sort of transforming in terms of your role within society, your role within the community you live with, also your relationship with siblings and people from your, like from birth. You know, they may become a lot more important at this time. And you know, Pluto can show that anywhere where you're trying to control things with them, it gets very difficult. You need to sort of be able to trust that everything's going to go well. Uranus, also a slow mover. He's moving from Taurus into Gemini on the 7th of July. And then during that transit, you know, of Jupiter in Cancer, he's also going to go back into Taurus and then back into Gemini in April of 2026. So Uranus, which is a planet of change, is really showing that your lifestyle and how you plan your life and where you are in your life is likely to get quite disorganized. There's going to be a lot of new things going on that you need to counter and be aware of. And then, you know, when he's really in the Gemini part of this time, he's bringing lots of unusual and unexpected and freedom loving people, possibly people you can't necessarily rely on. I mean, these are very unique people. He's bringing unique situations and unique people into your life, which is interesting because working with Pluto, he's really, you know, showing you that you've got a new role within your community. So there's a lot of community and role things coming up. Now, with Saturn and Neptune going from the 4th and into the 5th, again, there's this encouragement for you to get a lot more creative in your world. So what are you birthing? How can you be more spiritual in your birthing right now? And how can you be more organized to get a lot of things done very, very well to a high quality standard? So to me, it feels like there's this sort of creative need and a creative role change. Now, if you think about it, Jupiter coming through the 8th is going to be challenging how you transform yourself. He's going to be helping you burst forwards and unravel any of your self-judgments. Well, all of these planets, as far as I can see, are giving you the material to change how you see yourself and to maybe not judge yourself so harshly. And also, of course, if you're not judging yourself so harshly, you won't be judging other people so harshly. So I'm going to leave that there. I hope that's helpful for you as a pointer as to what Jupiter in Cancer could bring you. If you would like to explore this further, there are a few ways that I can offer you right now. The first one is I've got a link to a WhatsApp astrology service called Astronex. And this link, if you click this link, it will give you 5 free questions, astrological questions based on your birth chart, which could be very useful. The next way is I've got a membership on the school platform. And it's a place where I put a lot of sort of extra content that can help you in your days. But we've got some lovely people there, people who are really bursting forth and unraveling themselves and unraveling their self-judgments. And, we meet up every couple of weeks and we have a lovely conversation, and we're all sort of sharing and opening up together. So that might be helpful to you. Again, the links are below. But the other way is just to book into my diary, book a consultation with me. All of my details are below. So yeah, it's all there. Anyway, wishing you a great Jupiter in Cancer transit. And hopefully I'll catch up with you another time in another forecast real soon. Lots of love. Bye for now. Hey Capricorn, so Jupiter's going into the sign of Cancer. That's your opposite sign. And yeah, this is going to be interesting. Jupiter, wherever he goes in the chart, he's bringing the possibility of growth, and he's bringing a sense of like an amalgamation, like things are spinning bigger and stronger and faster. Jupiter is like an avalanche. If you think of a tiny little snowball, and it gathers weight and momentum as it gets things moving. And so it's interesting that Jupiter is going into your 7th house. What things would you like to get moving in terms of relationships right now? So, in astrology, seeing Jupiter going into the 7th house is seen, I think, with a sense of joy and expectation, especially if you're single. This could be marking a time when new great people start to come in, or that you are spoilt for choice, that there's a lot of people wanting to meet with you. It's also a time when the people around you seem a lot more buoyant, a lot more optimistic, a lot more humorous, a lot more up to having fun and to feel good. So this is all perfect, I would say. The 1st, the 4th, the 7th, and the 10th are angular houses. These are the houses that are really showing where big changes are coming in. So Jupiter coming over the descendant and coming into the 7th house, where you've got your Cancer energy, is really enhancing that need that you might have for an emotionally viable partner, a partner who is emotionally generous, who is soulful and faithful and utterly caring and compassionate and dedicated to you. So Jupiter coming into this is enhancing all of that. I love that so much. But I always recommend that people check out the previous transits through signs. If you want to get a feel for how Jupiter in Cancer is going to be for you, let's have a look what was going on 12 years ago, the last time he was doing that, or the time before. Now, I'm not going to go right the way back, in increments of 12, but I think 2 is quite a good amount to look back to. So the question becomes, what was going on for you in terms of your relationships and in terms of like the birthing potential for relationships and for enhanced freedom together, enhanced joy together between July 2001 and the end of July 2002? What was going on for you? Similarly, what was going on for you at the end of June 2013, right the way through to mid-July 2014, because that was when Jupiter was going through this part of your chart. If you were to look into an online or into an astrology book, they would say that Jupiter coming into your 7th house is bringing a greater sense of relationships and this kind of leaping forwards. Now, if we also think that Jupiter is a very abundant planet, you might find that there's more abundance. He's also quite fresh. There's also like this sense of freshness, youthfulness, abundance in your relationships. You might find that your partner is striking gold, that he or she or they, that they are, suddenly feeling really quite bountiful, that things are going well for them. And it brings up a level of freedom and a level of curiosity together and lightheartedness. So it's seen as really, really beautiful. What you might want to watch out for is, are there too many partners coming in, too many opportunities? If you're already in a relationship or and you're very, very satisfied, you might also find that there's lots of great people coming into your life, full stop. There might be too many. One thing I noticed about my 7th house is when Uranus came into my 7th house a while ago, my astrology practice started to really fill up and it expanded quite quickly. So I really think that the type of people coming into your world are really described by the planets coming through that part of your chart. So Jupiter coming through over the next year could really bring in hopeful, optimistic, lucky, larger than life characters. And if people like that are coming in, kind of let them in, see what they've got to offer, see what they want to bring you, what gifts they want to bring you. Jupiter in Cancer is lowering our boundaries. It's really letting our boundaries down. So again, that's another reason for more people coming into your world. A couple more things. You might also find that the people around you are a bit too laid back, or maybe there's not enough care, even though like Jupiter in Cancer is very, very caring. Jupiter can be a little bit irresponsible. So that's just one thing to bear in mind. But, when you're talking about people that have got a larger than life love of fun and love of connection and love of this, that, and the other, that kind of personality isn't necessarily that nitpicky and that accurate with saying what time they're going to show up and so on and so forth. So it's worth bearing in mind. I always think that what's going on also depends on the quality of your Jupiter in your birth chart. So I've got an earlier chapter called, I don't know the exact title of it because I haven't written it in yet, but it's very much about how strong is your Jupiter. Is your Jupiter weak? Is it strong? If you have a look at that chapter, you'll be able to analyze your own Jupiter in your birth chart and to find out if it's really, really strong. If you've got a good, strong Jupiter theme, then all the best aspects of this particular Jupiter in Cancer they're going to be enhanced. It's going to bring a lot more relationship magic into your world. If your Jupiter is quite challenged and possibly debilitated or afflicted in your birth chart, you might find that that the worst aspects of it are materializing. But again, I would check with what was going on in the previous 2 times. My final thoughts about this is that this is also a Jupiter in Cancer transit that's unlike any others we've gone through. For instance, the 4 slowest planets beyond Jupiter in our solar system, and I'm including Pluto, even though he's a dwarf planet, they are all in the process of or have just moved into a new sign. So for instance, Aquarius, like Pluto in Aquarius, he's going to be there for the next 19 years and he's transforming everything to do with money, everything to do with how much trust you have in yourself, in terms of your self-esteem and in terms of yourself as a manifester. And do you feel safe in your life? Do you feel safe and looked after? Do you trust that life's got your back or not? You're going to be challenged with that. You've got Uranus coming out of Taurus and going into Gemini on the 7th of July. And with that, life is likely to open up quite a lot. Uranus coming into the 6th house is going to most likely throw a lot of your stable, steady Eddie kind of energies where your life is working very beautifully and very regularly, with a very fine rhythm, Uranus there is going to create a little bit of a change. There's a lot of change and innovation needed to redesign your life to match where you're going, and maybe you might be using technology to help you. I don't know, but because of what you're learning about your self-value, that's changing about how you might want to live. So I think there's an increased openness coming in for you, in honesty. Similarly, we've got Saturn in Aries and also Neptune in Aries. Now, looks like they're in Pisces here. I needed to just turn the image slightly, but they are going in between Aries and Pisces and then back into Aries. And so here we've got this real sort of feeling of change in terms of how you're living. So it's interesting how you're living, how you're organizing your life, and how you value yourself. These are massive changes. And of course, the more you're clearing up your life and making more space, the more likely you are to meet somebody, as Jupiter is going into Cancer, that can come in because there's space in your life. So I really think these are all working together. And so hence my comment, Jupiter in Cancer is so much more potent now. So finally, I just want to say, if you're looking for a little bit more support and guidance about Jupiter going into Cancer, or in fact anything astrological and your birth chart, then I've got these 3 ideas. The first one is I've got a link below where you can get 5 free questions for a new WhatsApp astrology service called Astronex. So feel free to click that link. After all, it's free. You've got nothing to lose there. You can give it a go and see what comes up. I always think it's quite helpful to get advice and information from a series of places. Secondly, I've got a membership which is steadily growing. Nice, like a nice, slow, steady growth. That particular membership on School is really supportive. There's lots of additional content that I create. We have meetups whereby we're learning and sharing together and referring everything back to astrology, but there's an openness. There's this really lovely, warm, nurturing, nourishing space that's being created, and you're very welcome to join. The links are below. Finally, you might choose that you just want a consultation with me, and that's fine. That's absolutely perfect. All you need to do is book your space into my diary. Again, all the links are below. So there you go, Capricorn. Have a great one. Have a great journey of Jupiter going through your 7th house. And yeah, hopefully catch you in another forecast real soon. Lots of love. Bye for now. Hey there, Aquarius. So Jupiter's going into Cancer on the 9th of June, and he's going to be there until the 30th of June, 2026. So just over a year of Jupiter going into your 6th house. So what I'm going to do in this short forecast is pace you through what I think could be happening, what the opportunities are, what you might want to watch out for. Also, a couple of tips on how you can determine what might be going on. Like, we'll be looking what was going on in the last Jupiter in Cancer, and also how you can judge a little bit about the strength of your Jupiter as well. So there's lots going on with this particular transit. So the first thing to acknowledge about this is, Jupiter is an expansive planet. He is bringing us the gift of growth. He is shining a light on a new thing we might want to develop and evolve and work through. Jupiter is open-hearted and he's very generous. And in the sign of Cancer, he's also very soppy. He is so warm-hearted, and he absolutely I think wants to do good deeds. Jupiter in Cancer really wants to do good deeds in a beautiful way. And of course, the 6th house has an element of serving others and being of service. It's also a place, where we're creating our life. We're really creating the story of us. We're really thinking about what we do on a regular basis, the times we're doing it, who we're doing it with, how we're doing it, how the money comes in to do it, how we're keeping ourselves healthy, blah, 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 blah. There's lots going on there. We are really looking at the habits, the habitualness of your life. And Jupiter coming into this part of your chart is showing that most likely there's going to be some new things coming into your world. There's some new things to bear in mind. There's a new sense of, I remember when Jupiter went through that part of my chart, all of a sudden my life got quite bonkers. It was like there was a lot to manage. Now, I do think, and I'm really taking this cue from a wonderful astrologer that I know on Facebook, and you'll see her name below, just because I don't want to pronounce it wrong, but I'm going to spell it correctly. But anyway, she, she shared publicly, and her Jupiter is in her 6th house natally, and she shared that she's had a little bit of ill health with Jupiter going into Cancer during those times, and she's mapped it out in a beautiful way. She's really, really insightful, and her experiences, I think, she thinks, are caused because her Jupiter in her natal chart are not very strong. I think her Jupiter is retrograde, and there are a few other things, meaning that her Jupiter energy, maybe it's hard to get the sort of benefits of Jupiter coming into Cancer when your own Jupiter energy is not working and flowing as easily as it is with somebody maybe with Jupiter in Pisces or Sagittarius, or somebody who's got a really well placed Jupiter in their charts. So yeah, one thing I would say, with the 6th house, lots of things can go wrong because, your daily routine is encapsulated within it, how you afford your life and how you pay your bills, and the way you pay your bills, the way you keep yourself healthy, and how you enjoy being in your world. It's a place that is like the office manager. The 6th house, I think, is a really hard working part of your chart. So Jupiter coming in could be bringing in lots and lots of opportunities and lots of gifts and things. But if there's an aspect of your life that's not quite working so well, Jupiter can really bring a lot of inflammation into your world. He can really amplify the things that aren't going so well. So my advice to you right off the bat is, anywhere where you don't have great flow in your life, try to take out all the bits that are too much and create a bit of space, because Jupiter's likely to be bringing in quite a lot of new things, a lot of interesting things that maybe are more relevant. I do think Jupiter searches for relevancy. When things are current, when they're hot, when they're trendy, Jupiter's on it like a tramp on a sandwich. He is absolutely right there. He wants to be the first and the best and blah, 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 blah. So he's going to be bringing you lots of interesting new things into your world. And if your life is already overstretched or under-resourced and overstretched, Jupiter bringing in all these new things could feel a bit like a curse rather than a blessing. So my advice is to keep a lot of space, to pull some things out that aren't already working, that maybe you're already done with, create the space so the great things can slot right in. I'm also very aware that after this, halfway through 2026, he's going to be going into Leo. And in particular, he's going to be going into the 7th house, which is all about your relationships. Now, if you're single and you're really ready for a deep relationship, an exciting relationship, whatever, or if, you're already in an existing relationship and maybe are wanting even more joy and flow and abundance together, then again, the more you are clearing your life out of everything that's not relevant to create space for Jupiter to put in all the things that are relevant, I think it's conditioning your world so a new partner can come in, or that the partner that you've got, you can express yourself in a much more current and enjoyable way. So it's worth bearing in mind that, I think. So here's some of the words that might be giving you some extra descriptions about Jupiter and Cancer. So he's expressing through your health, your daily chores, your work, your living, and how you'll be expanding and getting way busier. He's also possibly bringing in more abundance. Now, he is an abundance planet for sure. And you are managing your money here. I mean, I think you earn your money here, you're managing your money here. And I really think the 10th is showing what the world is seeing and how new people might be finding you. So yeah, this is a money management place. If you take the right advice, your money could really expand during this time. But I really would advise you do it not from a place of chaos and being too busy. I would do it from a place of, I'm giving myself the time to learn how to manage my money and to see it grow. One of the things to really watch out for with this is exhaustion, because you know, like I said, I think when this was going through my chart, we moved quite a few times, and I had a really like a toddler and 2 small children at that time. So, you know, for me, I was totally exhausted the last time he went through this part of my chart. This can be a time when we overindulge a little bit and we maybe not looking after ourselves because there's too much going on. So overdoing it completely, not taking enough care are some of the dangers here. So I hope that's helpful. The last thing that I really want to point out with this is, you know, this particular Jupiter in Cancer transit is very, very different from all the previous ones, you know, because the position of Pluto, Saturn and Neptune and Uranus, they're all new in signs or going to be. You know, Pluto is, you know, he has been transitioning into Aquarius since 2023, but he has been a permanent resident here since November 2024. He's really changing the way your body is reacting to things. The first house has a lot to do with your body. And so given that there's a health thing going on here in your sixth, this can really show where, you know, what's going on with Pluto and your body can have a knock-on effect. These guys can be working together. I mean, Pluto is really showing how you can have more power in your body. But as ever with Pluto, the more you're trying to control it, the less power you have. So it's almost like you have to trust in your body. And in the trust of it, you get into your own power. With Saturn and Neptune coming from Pisces and going into Aries, there's this very strong emphasis on your local community and the people that you've grown up around, the people that are around you all the time. It's your neighborhood, where you're shopping, where you're having coffee. It's like everything local and what is known. And so Saturn coming in here is showing that you might be getting stronger in your community, taking more effort. You might be a lot more responsible. Neptune is also coming, like he's already in the sign of Aries. You know, you may find that there's a much more spiritual energy within your local community. So it's interesting, you know, what's going on in your body, and there's changes in how you experience your community. With Uranus going into the 5th house, it's also showing that it's time to be birthing a more creative you. And that might involve actually birthing real life humans, raising children. But it's really asking you to get a lot more creative in your world, you know, to open up to what is lifting you up. So what I'm really getting here is the community, you expressing yourself and having trust in your body. They're all going to have an impact on Jupiter. You know, never was there such a strongly emphasized time that this time is for you to develop yourself, Aquarius. And of course, if you're doing that, that is likely to bring in a lot of change in terms of your diary and how you manage it. Here, Jupiter, if you're careful, can help you manage more. So I'm going to leave that there. I hope that's helpful for you. If you are looking for some extra advice, like I said, there's an earlier chapter where you can look into your own chart and see how strong or weak your Jupiter is. But if you want some practical advice about managing this, you might find a consultation with me to be useful. I've also got my membership whereby we're a bunch of, it's a steadily growing group, and we're all open about our astrology, and we spend time chatting. We have meetups every couple of weeks. There's a lot of extra content. If that sounds like something that would be useful for you, then absolutely get involved. And there's also a link. All of the info for this is in the description box, by the way, down below underneath this video. But the final thing, there's a WhatsApp astrological service called Astronex. And if you click on the link for Astronex that I've supplied underneath, you'll get 5 free questions. So you get to test it out. You can ask a question and see what comes up. So there's some extra ways that you can maybe interpret this moment in time. I hope that was helpful for you, Aquarius. And yeah, hopefully I'll catch you in another video another time real soon. Lots of love to you. Bye for now. Pisces, how are you doing? So this is, I think, a lovely movement for you with Jupiter going into the sign of Cancer. It's a fellow water sign. It's very, very gentle, very nourishing. Really beautiful. And for you, this particular planet, Jupiter, is going to be going into your 5th house. Now, I always think that in understanding the effect a particular transit is going to have on you, it's useful to look about what was going on in the past. And so I would encourage you to consider right now what was going on for you in July 2001 to the end of July 2002. How are you expanding in terms of your creativity, what you were bringing into this world, the sense of living your life fully and really lifting yourself up with what you were doing. The second time, the most recent time that Jupiter was in this part of your chart was at the end of June 2013, right the way through to mid-July 2014. So some of these energies, the fifth house has a lot to do with children, like birthing children. It's where our children show up. It's also where we're birthing something from us, something that feels really integral to who we are. It really is about our authenticity. So the passion, what are you really passionate about in life? It's also a place where we can really enjoy our sensuality. It's quite a sexual part of the chart as well, especially if you're in a new relationship. It's really where we get it on. Because again, all of that is that sort of creation energy from the womb. So creativity, children, passion, but it's also what you're about to grow like really big in a passionate way. All ways, all birthings, all possible growths coming from that sense of what lifts you up, what absolutely makes you feel exultant. It's a conception of something big. So again, I want to remind you, what were you doing 2001 to 2002 and 2013 to 2014? What was going on? Now, this is going to be a very different one to the previous ones, but it's most likely going to have some shared themes. And in particular, this one, at this moment in time, as Jupiter's going into the sign of Cancer, we've got the 4 slower planets after Jupiter in our solar system, and they're all in a new sign or edging into a new sign. And that is very, very unusual, really unusual. Like we haven't had it like this, in recorded history. Like I've been trying to find a time where Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and Jupiter and the North Node all change signs within 9 months of each other, and I can't find a time. And I've followed lots of other astrologers, and they can't find the last time that happened. So we are going through a massive human evolution right now, and so this particular Jupiter in Cancer is a lot more poignant. So if there is something you want to grow right now or to birth and to be very, very passionate about, this time is so much more potent. Now, if I give you a little description of what these are all meaning, that might give you an even bigger sense of what you might be about to create, or sow a seed to create. So Pluto currently is going through your 12th house, and Pluto, wherever he goes, he doesn't always make it easy. Pluto shows us where we're trying to control things, and often where our sense of controlling things makes things worse. Pluto can show us where our fears are, and funnily enough, the 12th house really does show us our fears and our insecurities. So there may be a real need for us, or for you, as you're sort of experiencing this Jupiter in Cancer, you might notice that the sense of needing to renovate or restore the way your unconscious mind works, almost like reprogramming your mind so that insecurities and fears and resistances in life don't become your main theme. So there's that aspect going on. We've also got Uranus coming out of the 3rd and moving into the 4th. He's going into the 4th house in the sign of Gemini on the 7th of July. Now, he is going to move back in and then forwards again into Gemini in April 2026. So, this is a bit of a movement, a bit of a shift going on from being unusual in your local environment to moving to this sense of, I need to move. My home is changing. Maybe my home is expanding. There's a real need to shift, and what you've been learning about your role in the local community, your role in the world, and how different you might be, that is having a sort of knock-on effect. It's time to move. There are things going on that are precipitating a need to move right now or to grow beyond your current shape and size. Now, Saturn coming out of the first and into the second, and the same with Neptune. Again, they're moving back into Pisces later this year and then back into Aries later in early 2026. But here, there's this sense that, you know, it's time to get really serious about your money. It's time to get serious about how you're resourcing things, and also to make the way you earn your living, make the way you manage your life work in a soulful way, a creative way, a spiritual way. So what I'm really seeing here with the movement of these planets is, you know, you're aware that there's so much more to life. I think you're aware that there's a much deeper version of you, and that maybe the life that we all see around us is just one element of life, but there's this other coexisting life of spirituality. And I really see that what you're going on with right now is making your everyday life kind of feel more spiritual. It's like you're bridging the physical and the spiritual world right now. And so in terms of what you're bringing forth with Jupiter going into your 5th house, I think anything that you're doing that's going to allow you to spiritualize, make your life more soulful, make it more meaningful, tuning into your inner purpose, all of that stuff is absolutely emphasized. Now, I do think one of the things that happens, you know, when Jupiter gets involved, it can be a bit like an avalanche. You know, you get this tiny little seed and or this tiny little snowball, and it starts to fall down the hill, and it gathers pace, weight, speed, and momentum. And so one of the difficulties with Jupiter coming through here is that things can move too fast. You might be over creating, you might be too quick, it might be unstable growth. You also might be sharing your creativity too far and too wide. I really think here in the 5th house, it's really an intimate space where you're kind of creating things behind the scenes, but maybe aren't ready to fully share it in the world. And I think sometimes when we share things in the world before we've got everything right in our hearts, it can bring up some tension and some real. I think it can retard our progress. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the things to watch out for. Now, this is bringing me to my last point, really, and that is, what's the quality of Jupiter in your chart? See, I'm referring to a lovely Facebook story that somebody posted about their own life and how they've mapped astrology back, you know, through their chart and through a multitude of situations that they experienced every 12 years without fail. And what she noticed beautifully was that when Jupiter is maybe not so strong in your chart, that it can, like when your Jupiter energy is not working very well in your chart, when Jupiter comes into a new part of your chart, it can be overemphasized. You know, things can get out of control quite quickly. If you've got a very strong working Jupiter, you know, and Jupiter is exalted or is ruling, if Jupiter is very enhanced in your chart, you might find that Jupiter changing signs is really helpful, you know, because you've already got the Jupiter flavor going on really well in your chart. So I think where you've got the flavor of Jupiter, he's going to work to help you. And hopefully you can keep up. It shouldn't be too dramatic, but where you don't have a good flavor or a good experience of working with Jupiter, he might just get a little bit unruly and a little bit out of hand. So it's worth checking that out. But anyway, I hope that's helpful for you, Pisces. You know, I think he's your ruling planet. So this is an important move for sure. If you want some extra advice, I've got 3 options for you right now. The first one is just book an appointment with me. That's, you know, obviously that's an easy one to do. You just have to click on a link and it goes direct to my diary. And where there's space, book yourself in. My next suggestion is you can get 5 free questions with a WhatsApp astrological service called Astronex. So I've popped the link in there for you to give it a go. So you can have 5 questions and try it out and see if it's something that you like. The last of all, I've got a membership that I host on the platform School. This membership is a place which is growing steadily, like slowly but steadily. And we've got some beautiful people who are members, who are contributing. And there's lots of additional content that I don't put on YouTube that goes on there. We have meetups every couple of weeks where we're talking about something going on in the charts, and we're relating it back to our own lives. And so there's this kind of social aspect. You don't have to learn about your chart or explore your chart on your own. You can absolutely meet with like-minded souls and feel that nourishment that Jupiter in Cancer really gives us. So I'm going to leave that there for you, Pisces, sending you loads and loads of love. And hopefully I'll catch up with you real soon. Bye for now. So those are my thoughts on this mega Jupiter in Cancer encounter. I don't know if that was helpful for you. I hope there were some bits that you were able to benefit from, for sure. I'm quite excited. You know, I'm a Sagittarius with my moon in Pisces. Most of my planets are in Sagittarius and Pisces, and also one in Cancer as well. So I've got quite a good Jupiter profile, I have to say. It's probably why my channel is called Feel Good Astrology. It's all about feeling good. So whatever's going on for you, I hope it goes well. I really do recommend like taking note of what's going on in your life and sort of diarizing it, you know, like watching the dates and checking out what's going in the charts. I think the more we know about the flow of our life, the more empowering the use of astrology is for us. So hopefully you'll be realizing so much. And of course, Jupiter is all about realizations and growth, really spiritual, really religious, really does want to expand and have a deeper knowledge of everything. So anyway, I'm going to leave that there. If I can be of any help, you know where I am. All of the links are below. If you want to try out AstroNext, for instance, and get 5 free questions, it's all there for you. But yeah, hopefully we'll be talking about something soon all together. Who knows? I guess the next big release for me will be the Uranus going into Gemini. Quite excited about that. For me, that's just like as a little aside. I really think, you know, obviously we've had Pluto move, Neptune, obviously the North Node changed signs as well, and then Saturn, Jupiter, and then the next one, Uranus. To me, that's the set. I think things are going to go really quite fast after the 7th. I wonder what you think about that. Anyway, I'm going to let you go. Take care and speak to you all soon. Bye for now.